Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind's match day coverage. I'm Paul John Dykes, and tonight I am joined by Declan McConville and David Slight. Welcome back to the show, guys.
Hello, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
And we're looking forward to a first game, it seems like, in a wee while. Obviously, we're getting thrown right into it with the European exploits this evening. The lineup has been announced. Declan, what's your thoughts on how that's going to be set up? How are we going to start off in terms of a formation?
I think, looking at it, I don't think anybody ever predicted that lineup. Beaton coming into the side, Ayer dropping out, and Elhamed coming back into the team. Not really seen Elhamed have a bad game for Celtic as of yet, and Beaton seems to be Mr. Reliable in these qualifiers. Neil constantly goes back to him. So I think we'll go back four. Elhamed, Julian, Beaton, Taylor, the usual holding midfielders of Scott Brown and McGregor, with the three in behind Edward of Forest, Christian Elyounoussi, but that can be adapted to maybe a 3-5-2 if the manager feels he needs it, and put Elyounoussi up top with Eddie.
David, any major surprise? I think Beaton, I didn't expect to see him starting this evening, did you?
No, absolutely not. I think everybody expected to see Ayer and Frimpong in the starting lineup, but we've got Mr. Reliable near Beaton, as Declan says, and I've never seen Elhamed have a bad game for Celtic. He's been thoroughly reliable every time he's played, so I'm sure he'll acquit himself well. You'd expect Celtic to set up with four at the back, but I think what Neil Lennon's done with that team selection is he's allowed himself a significant degree of flexibility, because clearly we could move to a three at the back with Elhamed, Julian, and who's the other centre back? Beaton, thank you. With Taylor pushing up and perhaps Elyounoussi moving forward and joining Edouard up front.
Yeah, I mean, we welcome as much contribution as possible from our live audience. So please comment, ask questions, get involved. YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. Get yourself subscribed on the YouTube channel. I think we've gone live 4 times today, Declan. Yep. Content all day long today, and we'll be increasing our content as the season progresses. It's unfortunate that we can't be there tonight, but this is the next best thing, watching the game live and getting involved in the discussion, because that's what you generally do if you're not at the game anyway, Declan. You're on Twitter, you're making the comments, you're in a WhatsApp group. Just get involved and throw them in. We've got a few comments coming in already, which we'll be checking just shortly, but let's have a look at the bench. Any surprises on there? It's a welcome return for Tommy Rogic.
It's good to see Rogic back in. You know, we were screaming out for creativity at Kelly, and we've got guys there that look as if they could come on and change a game, and Tom Rogic, Olivier and Cham, obviously. A lot of Celtic supporters will still be disappointed that Olivier's not starting, but Ryan Christie does have a big impact in the team, and I think a lot of people forget that. He scored the most goals in qualifiers last season, 4 goals before we were dumped out of the competition by Cluj. His assists and goals, I think it was 15 goals, 15 assists or something last season, so it's a good record. But you've got guys on the bench, and obviously Ayeti's on the bench. It'd be great to see him come on and maybe make his Celtic Park debut, but it's a strong bench and it's a strong Celtic team.
It is a strong bench. I think what Declan was saying there, David, there may be some Celtic fans frustrated at Enchamp not starting, but the question would be, who does he start instead of?
Yeah, it's not obvious. Having said that, the midfield collectively had one of its off days in the last outing at Rugby Park, so arguably Encham could replace any of the three in midfield. Be interesting to see if Greg Taylor plays 90 minutes tonight, because right now, in the absence of Mr. Bolingoli, he's our only serviceable left back. So it might be that if things are looking comfortable after an hour or so, Greg Taylor's placed in cotton wool for Tannadice on Saturday evening.
We've got to consider that, we really do. I mean, obviously all the chat this week has been about potential replacements at left back. Aaron Hickey has been mentioned. We're going to be speaking a lot more about that tomorrow on the bulletin. Where else do we look for a left back, David? It's always been one of these positions.
Barry Douglas is the name mentioned, isn't he?
Yeah.
I saw Barry Douglas play for Queen's Park a number of times back in the day, and certainly at that level he was a real standout, naturally left-footed player, and I expected him to go on to play for Scotland much more regularly than he has. Of course, Scotland's got an absolute embarrassment of riches at the left-back position at the moment, with Kieran Tierney and Andy Robertson slugging it out, Barry Douglas as well on the fringes, Greg Taylor. Aaron Hickey coming through at Hearts now too. So there's any number of players that Scotland could select at left back right now. But Barry Douglas is a player I rate, and I certainly think he'd add something to the Celtic setup. He went off the rails somewhat at Dundee United. I believe he was sharing accommodation with Mr. Goodwillie at the time, so that probably didn't help his development. But he went off to Poland. I think matured a lot there. He's come back, played a lot of Championship football in England, and I think he'd be an excellent acquisition for Celtic. He comes from a Rangers family, I believe, but I think he'd be a great pick for Celtic.
Where are we with Bolingoli? I mean, there was obviously a mooted loan deal, ship him out on loan. Do you think that still might happen? Or the reports today is that the club that somehow had an interest in him might have already bought another left back?
Yeah, Amiens in the French Ligue 2 have been the club that have been mentioned in connection with Bolingoli. We'll need to see. I mean, I think I'm quite sure. I mean, at the end of the day, he's a left back for whom Celtic paid £3 million. So there will be clubs interested in him, even if Celtic need to ship him out at a loss. And I think there'll be plenty of clubs around Europe prepared to overlook his most recent indiscretion. So I've little doubt that they will find a taker for Bolingoli. I'd be most surprised if he played for Celtic again after what's happened.
I think so as well. I mean, Declan, you were talking about the now infamous interview yesterday where questions were being thrown at Scott Brown about morale. I mean, it was a bit of strange timing for an interview like that, was it not?
It was poor, especially from Celtic TV. I actually noticed that the screening was on before the game, so I'm surprised they've actually broadcast that before the game after it had been taken down off Twitter. Very odd. Said even before a big game to put out an interview like that with the captain, wanting to draw back to a story that had kind of passed, to ask him about questions about morale and the feeling in the changing room towards Bolingoli, to me wasn't the right interview to go with Scott. They should have been asking about the game tonight and how he saw our Champions League campaign starting off against Kia Reykjavík.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's have a look at some of the comments coming in from the viewers on Facebook, Twitter, and also on YouTube. And some of these guys and girls are becoming regulars. Red Scotland, come on the hoops. Big performance tonight from the boys. There is an air of expectation because we've been missing a couple of games over the last week or so. Obviously, the guys on the pitch just now, I think, are strong enough. We've spoken earlier on today, Declan, about the kind of mentality of Neil Lennon and the troops that he has there. I've got absolutely no doubt they'll be able to pull this back. But it isn't ideal, we know that. But let's not labour it. Let's just get stuck in here. How do you feel the game's going to go this evening?
I think due to the fact it's a one-off tie, the game could become quite open. If it was the usual typical home and away leg, we might have saw Reykjavík come to Celtic Park and sit in, park the bus, try and escape with a very narrow margin defeat. But they will need to open up if they have any ambition to go any further in this tournament, which is where they could be caught out on the size of the park at Celtic Park, and the fact that our team will want to be sending a message out that they're hungry and want to play football, because they were the biggest victims in the whole Bolingoli incident. They had 2 games taken away from them early on in the season that I'm sure they were absolutely choking to play.
Absolutely, yeah, you're right there, Declan. Now, Kevin Graham, who is a contributor on a regular basis to Celtic State of Mind, and he could have been here this evening, but hopefully he'll be able to join us on Saturday. And Kevin says, "Evening lads, big decision from the manager bringing in Beaton. And is it a 4 or a 3 at the back?" Well, I would go with the formation of El Hamid at right back, Taylor at left, and Julian and Beaton in the centre. But as you say, David, it's all about adaptability when you have the personnel. And of course, you've got Frimpong on the bench. I don't think Frimpong's a right back.
No, I think a lot of people would agree with you, and I think defending is Frimpong's weakest suit. I mean, he's a really strong player going forward. But as a back four, I think in terms of from a defensive standpoint, I think seeing Hatem El Hamid in the back four gives you a sort of greater degree of reassurance. But I expect Celtic to be absolutely raring to go tonight. They've been cooling their heels for 10 days through no fault of their own. And I think if they can play like they did against Hamilton in the opening league fixture, make use of the width, get El Yunusi and Taylor bombing forward on the left, Forest on the right, then I'm sure they'll cause KR Reykjavik big problems this evening. I'm pretty confident at this stage.
Yes, El Yunusi that you've mentioned, I don't think he's got going yet this season, David. He's a player that I rate highly. I was delighted when we got him back in on loan. Do you think tonight is the night for him just to get the legs stretched and to do something a wee bit more positive?
Well, let's hope so. He was one of the best performers in pre-season. Managed to grab himself a goal over in France and looked very good in the pre-season game. So it's been a bit of a mystery why he's been as relatively anonymous as he has in the first couple of league games. But let's hope against the opposition on offer tonight he can turn in a good performance and get himself up to the level that we'd all like to see him operating at.
Yes, you're going live here for Matchday. This is a Celtic State of Mind's coverage. We've been broadcasting live on a daily basis for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Everything we do is free of charge, so please subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, and join the group on Facebook as well. As you can see at the top of the screen, we have a sponsor for the match day. It's JBM's. Now, JBM's offer the electrical, mechanical and fit-out services. And if you want to be a sponsor, get involved. We're going out to a huge amount of viewers and listeners on a daily basis. We've got an award-winning podcast and we're building on that. So if you do wish to sponsor us, get in touch and we'll be able to offer you some opportunities either on the live broadcast, on the podcast or on the site. Let's go back to some more of the comments. This is all about engagement this evening. If you are watching the game, you can get involved by sending us a tweet or commenting on Facebook or YouTube. Red Scotland, glad to see Beaton getting game time. The big man is a good player and has shown real loyalty to Celtic. El Hamid is a great player too, and we shouldn't be surprised if often the first choice. He would be in my first pick. El Hamid every day of the week would be in my first choice 11, Declan. And I think, the impact that Frimpong made when he came into the side, coupled with an unfortunate run of injuries for El Hamid, is the only reason he's not been in the side. I think when he's in there, we look a much calmer defensive unit.
He brings solidity to the back four, and especially in big matches, especially in games such as at Ibrox last season and away in Rome. He just seemed to calm it right down, as you're saying there. Whereas at times Frimpong can be a bit erratic. He's great going forward, but again, his winger in front of him doesn't like to track back too much either. So if the two of them are going forward, James is maybe cut inside and Frimpong's down that right hand channel, you can be severely caught out. So I think having El Hamid there just brings that wee bit of calmness to the back four, that he will do his job and sit there and deal with any danger down the left hand side that will come his way as right back.
Gary Doonan, welcome back to the show. You are a regular contributor and we appreciate that. So you're messaging us on the Facebook platform. 3 central midfield positions. Encham doesn't start ahead of them at present. I tend to agree with that, despite the fact we were poor in that department against Kilmarnock. At this moment in time, that is the correct decision not to play Encham. But I think from his own perspective, if he doesn't get game time, he'll be looking to move on.
Yeah, he will. And we all know that Encham complained to the French sports daily L'Équipe, chose to give an interview to them mid-part of last season saying he wasn't happy and perhaps needed to move on out of Scottish football in order to develop his career. He had a 1-to-1 with Neil Lennon when he returned to Celtic after that. They seemed to sort of rebuild bridges with the manager and had a good run in the team in the second half of last season when Celtic went on that run that saw them build a big lead over Rangers. So I'm absolutely certain Encham will get his chance this season. Injuries they're not a maybe, they're a fact. They will happen, and players dip in and out of form as well. So Encham will get his chance, and he's absolutely the sort of player that Celtic need to be hanging on to if they're to harbour realistic aspirations of doing the 10 and making inroads in Europe, which is every bit as important this season.
See, when you look at McGregor there, I do think back to the last time we played this team. 6 years ago, Declan, what age were you?
14.
14 years of age. It doesn't seem like 6 years ago, David, but when you think back and you look at the side and the makeup of that side and the fact that was the beginning really of Ronnie Dyler's reign, we played him at Murrayfield. It was the beginning also of a great career for Callum McGregor, 21 years of age at the time.
Yeah. I wonder who's survived from that team. McGregor, Griffiths maybe. Well, Griffiths certainly still on the books, but there wouldn't be many others.
Forest.
Forest. I'm not sure Forest played in that game, but
Beaton will have been there at Celtic that time as well.
But certainly that was the beginning of Callum McGregor's Celtic career, and the goal in Reykjavík to set up things for the return.
The thing with McGregor, he's a different player now, isn't he? When you think back to the player that we saw being introduced by Ronnie Dyler, he liked to take on a man back then. He had a jink about him. He's a completely different player when you see him now, isn't he?
He's an absolute metronome in midfield now for Celtic, Callum McGregor. So much goes through him. He's always making himself available, never hides in games, always wants the ball, can see a pass, and can score goals as well. As I said during the Kilmarnock game, for my money, he's the single most important player on Celtic's books. He's so pivotal to everything we do.
Oh yeah, he certainly is. And there's also the question of the striker department. I mean, Edouard is by far the first choice striker for Celtic. We've brought in Ayeti, who I'd love to see entering the fray this evening. And then third choice at the moment, Klimala. Griffiths is injured, apparently. Will we see Griffiths getting back into the Celtic side?
I don't know. I was saying to David before we came on air, in Neil's press conference yesterday, he was asked the question, is everybody fit? And he said yes, apart from Griffiths, who's not available, and Mikey Johnson, who has his surgery, 3 to 5 weeks. So he gave us a number in Mikey Johnson, but just kind of skirted over Griffiths. So it appears that there's still some sort of issue. If he had an injury, I don't know why he didn't tell us he had an injury. So I don't really know where Griffiths' place is just now at Celtic, but as you say, there's Ayeti and Klimala right in front of him, so I don't know when he's going to fit in and where he's going to fit in, but he's still an option and he's still a Celtic player.
Do you still have hope, David, that we'll see Leigh Griffiths in a Celtic jersey again?
Yeah, I do, absolutely. I mean, it wasn't so long ago that Leigh was first choice when Celtic were playing two up front. Second half of last season alongside Odsonne-Edouard. We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that he dovetailed very well with Odsonne-Edouard. We've not really seen Klimala have an opportunity to do that yet. Ayeti has yet to make his debut, so we don't know how he'll dovetail with Edouard either. So I think Leigh's got to remember that he's still holding an awful lot of aces. Mm-hmm. He's the man with the track record of scoring goals in the Celtic first team. He knows what Celtic's all about. He's done it. He's been there. He's got the T-shirt. If he can just get himself back to the level of match sharpness required and discipline himself a wee bit, then there's absolutely no reason why he can't get back on board in terms of the first team reckoning at Celtic. I'd love to see him do it.
So would I, absolutely. And I think, that would be the feeling amongst the majority, if not all of the Celtic support, David. Just looking at Celtic Park at the moment, there was a glorious bit of sunshine there. Missing the old dear paradise, Declan?
It's just not the same without it. I mean, just watching it like this, empty stands, just not the same at all. This would be a big night, kind of night you would go along to the game, one of those ones you don't need to take a jacket to Celtic Park. It's the only time of the year you can do that, and we all love a Champions League qualifier under the lights. And it's incredibly 3 years come December, we haven't heard the Champions League music at Celtic Park since Anderlecht knocked us out the competition under Brendan Rodgers. So it would be good to at least get the tune this year and get the disco lights back in action, how they should be used properly.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, that should be synonymous with Celtic Park, shouldn't it? And it had been for a long time. So this season, a lot is riding on 10 in a row, and we all accept that. And it is the priority, absolutely no doubt about it. But Champions League and Celtic goes hand in hand, David.
It does. And I said earlier on that I regard progress in Europe this season as big a priority as Europe. And the reason I say that is I think for guys like Odsonne-Edouard, Olivier Ntcham, it's so important. It's so important. It's so important for the prestige of Celtic. It's so important for these guys to have that opportunity to play at that level for Celtic. I mean, remember last season when we were dumped out of the Champions League qualifiers and then dumped out of the Europa League by Copenhagen? Odsonne-Edouard's face absolutely tripping him. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt where he wants to be playing, and the stage he wants to be playing on is the Champions League. Failing that, the Europa League, but the Champions League is a prestige competition, gives Celtic an opportunity to pit themselves against the absolute creme de la creme of European football. And I'd like to think that if we could get back to that stage, we'd do a wee bit better than we did, certainly away from home under dear old Brendan.
It would be good to see Neil Lennon. I mean, the progress it was so disappointing against Copenhagen, but there were signs of progress last season in Europe from Neil Lennon's side, and it would be great to see him pit that up against the top clubs in the Champions League again. We had some great nights under Lenny.
There was a good confidence in the team, especially away from home. I mean, I've been there and you're 3-0 down in a stadium in Germany or wherever, and you're thinking to yourself, what is the point sometimes coming, because you just know you're going to get beat. But last season, good positive result in France, great result in Italy, that'll be remembered forever, and obviously we'd qualified a really good strong home record too in the competition in the group stages, so it'd be good to see us build on that. But picking up what David says there, Champions League attracts players to the club as well. If we're wanting to add to this squad and add real quality, the Champions League is a massive draw for players wanting to come to Celtic, so it'll be the first priority if you're sitting down at the start of the season, as Neil probably does with his players, to tick off the list. So we want to get there, and we want to get that money, because that will be really important this season, especially with the money that Celtic's probably lost during COVID, to make up for those big losses. Champions League money is crucial. The failure to do that could possibly mean the loss of an asset, which could possibly be Olivier Ntcham, but we'll just need to wait and see about that.
We will. We're 5 minutes away from kick-off, and the comments continue to come in. Let's go back to them. And we have Alan Callaghan. Welcome to the discussion, Alan, and you're messaging us via our YouTube channel. Please register on there so that we can contribute even more content on a daily basis. Turnbull linked again. What's your thoughts on that? We've seen the young player sitting in the Celtic boardroom with the Celtic jersey on, one of the rising talents in Scottish football. It was a dreadful situation for the young kid, but he's back and we are being linked to him again. David, is he the type of player that if he was to be brought in, you would then be looking at, maybe offloading an Ntcham?
Yeah, possibly. If Turnbull's brought in for the kind of money that was been spoken about last year, then perhaps that does pave the way for an Olivier Ntcham exit. I think Turnbull would add a bit of freshness and dynamism that the midfield perhaps currently lacks at the moment, an extra dimension. I do think it's important just to freshen up and strengthen from a position of strength rather than be constantly chasing signings to fill holes. So now's the time to go and sign a guy like David Turnbull if we can. I felt really sorry for him last summer. His head was clearly all over the place, different people advising him to head in different directions, and then of course that injury revealed itself during the medical, but he seems to be back to his best already on the score sheet for Motherwell this season, and I think he's the sort of guy that Celtic absolutely should be looking at very, very carefully, and clearly they are.
When we were looking at him back in last year, David, what kind of fee were we talking about then?
I'm trying to remember. Was it 3 million? I think it was 3 million we were talking. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. So when you look again, Declan, at the comment you made about Ntcham, they're talking big money, aren't they? Because of the clubs who are involved. And if you make that move down to England, £20 million, you then consolidate that by bringing in a £3 million player in Turnbull. It may well be the type of business Celtic are looking to do. We've just seen the sides entering the field of play. Again, yeah, all the banners are up on the seats. Yep. The Celtic team are looking, that's a pretty natty old tracksuit top he's got in there, Declan. I know you're sporting one yourself, and it's just one of these things. You're looking at that side and you should be there watching them, but unfortunately we're unable to do so. But we'll be here all night covering the game against Reykjavík, and no one in this office, no one in this studio thinks that we're going to have any issue whatsoever tonight. Let's get an early goal though, because it's all about, I know that if there's a crowd there they can get on your back, but I think if you get an early goal, the players can settle down and they can go wide. And I think if we do get an early one, you're looking at 4-0.
Yeah, you're wanting us to just enjoy your football. And as we go back to earlier, our players will have been training for a week. The heads might have been doing a wee bit because they weren't getting to play games. So an early goal in this could just get them right into a good rhythm. You want us in a rhythm. The performance at Rugby Park was poor. It was under par. But at home, we should be dominant. And an early goal, I think, would set us on our way to a good result.
I think it's been confirmed that the lineup is the formation that we thought it might be. It's going to be good to see how El Hamid and Forrest link up, and hopefully Taylor and El Yunusi, because I think in the first game Taylor was a standout, and then last week against Kilmarnock it was a disappointing afternoon for everybody. But it would be good for us to see the width being used again. It's a bit unfortunate for Frimpong, but I think when it comes to defensive frailties, that's the reason he's been left out.
think so. Especially in a one-off tie, because you can't take any risks. I think as much as we're as confident as we are that we're going to get through this game, you know, it just takes one error at the back and you can be really staring down the barrel into the huddle there. So I think that's why we went for El Hamid, just for that solidity at the back and a calmness that he brings that maybe Frimpong wouldn't. And he can also come on at the game, Jeremy Frimpong. There's no reason why we can't maybe go to a back three and bring him on.
Yeah, or even stretch it, you know, if Forrest is going to be rested, as David suggested earlier, with some other players such as Greg Taylor, you know. We don't have a great amount of coverage on the right side, but that's us kicked off. So hopefully we will get this early goal, and we know how they've lined up. And it's unusual that the twice that we've played this side over the last 6 seasons, it's been in unusual circumstances. We've never played them at a packed Celtic Park. The first game is at Murrayfield, and then of course tonight it's a behind closed doors game, isn't it? So let's have a look, and hopefully Celtic can get on the score sheet, because then, you know, the nerves are settled in, aren't they?
Absolutely. It looks like Reykjavík are at full strength. There was a suggestion that Johnson, the left back, and Finn Bigasson, the centre forward, might miss this game, but they're both playing. I think Johnson, the left back, was the guy who had a trial at Rangers. So they're both playing. So Reykjavík at full strength.
Here we go.
Corner for Celtic.
And
And
a good
again,
ball across the face there by Elyounoussi.
it was, and you know, quite easily the defender could have knocked into his own net as well, Declan. But yeah, Elyounoussi is a player I rate extremely highly, and you're hoping that you've got that link up with Ajeti as well, because they know each other from their time at Bow. You're hoping that Ajeti will be the success that Elyounoussi was last season as well, but it's all Celtic at the minute, and hopefully we will get that early goal. And it could open the floodgates. Let's go back to some of the comments that are coming in on the social media just while you are fixed on that. And you can give me a scream or a shout if we score while I'm looking at these comments. Ken Walsh, good evening all. 5-0, thinks Ken Walsh. Welcome to the show, Ken. It's always a pleasure to see you getting involved. And Ken reckons it'll be an Eddie hat-trick. I wouldn't rule that out.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule that out, especially with these goals against Hamilton at Celtic Park. And if he gets the service correctly from the two wingers, no reason why Edward can't get on the score sheet tonight.
Great tracking back by Callum McGregor. You know, the guy has an engine in him, isn't he? And there's Scott Brown just kind of shoring it up. You're not going to see the 60 appearances from the likes of Scott Brown this season, I wouldn't have thought, David.
No, I don't think so. I think Scott Brown will be used more sparingly this campaign. Mind you, we've been saying that for the last 2 or 3 years, but I think he is beginning to slow down. I think he'd actually bring much more to the team if he was used in a more sparing fashion. Celtic are looking much better already as Edouard goes close with a header.
Good to see Taylor involved right away there, getting a good ball across. But going back to Christie earlier on, one of the reasons I think Neil Lennon keeps picking him is because he's a set piece taker. I don't know who else would be in that team that you would have taken set pieces. It just seems as if it's always Ryan Christie, which I don't get. I don't know how wingers can't take corners, but it's always Ryan Christie.
Is there anybody in the team who can take a corner?
Darren Reid, welcome to the show. You're commenting via Twitter. I'm on the hoops in Lenny we trust, and I think everybody in here would agree with that. Kenny Butler, welcome Kenny. It's great to hear from you via Facebook. Let's hope we're not blaming Bolly at the end of the night. Well, it would be all eyes on Bolly again, wouldn't it? I mean, things have gone a wee bit quiet on the ball and goalie front. I can't see it happening. I never become complacent in any game, David, but I'm pretty confident we're going to win by a margin this evening.
I think so too. We're looking much more fluent already, much faster pace, zipping the ball around, making use of the full width of the pitch. Everything that we didn't do against Kilmarnock. I mean, it's like watching a different team actually.
It is, and it's great to see us using the width again. You know, that is what was missing against Killie, quite deliberately on Kilmarnock's part, and that's fair play. But straight away we've created a few chances down the left, Declan, and this time Brown was using James Forrest on the right flank. So I think that will be a feature of tonight's performance. From Facebook, 352 for me and 4-0 Celtic. Well, we are playing 4 at the back, but 4-0 would sound good to me. Jason Christie, how are you today, guys. Welcome back, Jason. It's always great to see you getting involved. Keep the comments coming in. Jason reckons Turnbull keeps Motherwell ticking. He covers the pitch well, and he's got a good pass, a good range of passing. I mean, again, we go back to some of the discussion we had earlier today, David. There is some excellent talent in Scottish football at the moment. Turnbull would be a brilliant acquisition. I also think Hickey, even though it looks as though he's going to Bayern Munich, I think Hickey would also be a good addition to the squad. But the Scottish talent is still there, isn't it?
It is very much so. If you look for it, it's amazing how players all of a sudden appreciate in value as soon as they've had half a season in the Premier League or half a season in Ligue 1 in France. All of a sudden the sort of transfer market value triples or quintuples a goal here, I think.
Brilliant.
There we are, 1 up.
What a pass.
Brilliant ball from
There's a man, El Yunusi.
Yep, there he is.
I've been critical of him in the first 2 games, David, simply because I think he's a great player. I really rate him highly. But you pointed out that he got his goal and he looked good in pre-season. He got his goal against PSG. Look at that pass, that searching pass. What's that, 60 yards?
That's an exquisite pass from Julian, and that's what you want to see a big centre half doing, taking that touch in front of him, is looking for a player and giving him hoops. It's a brilliant ball, and as well as that, he's
First
even
touch.
2 guys there. First touch is excellent on the goalkeeper, and he's as cool as you like. This could get embarrassing now for Reykjavik, because that's 5 minutes in the clock and we're already 1 up.
That's what we're looking for, Declan, isn't it? Sorry to have cut you off there, David. Got a wee bit excited with the opening goal.
Absolutely, I don't mind being cut off for a goal by El Yunusi. That's absolutely fine. I'm just talking about the way that players' values appreciate as soon as they leave Scottish football. It frustrates me the way that not just Celtic but Scottish teams in general don't seem to be able to get value for the money. I mean, I guarantee you, if Aaron Hickey plays even half a dozen games for Bayern Munich anytime soon, it won't be 1.5 million, it'll be 10 million.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. I just think players in Scotland are undervalued. There's a lot of talent up here, and it's a market that Celtic probably ought to look to exploit more than they do. Absolutely looking to go for the very cream of whatever talent is available in Scotland.
Well, you just got to look at Ryan Christie, haven't you? And the success of Christie coming from Inverness. His development has been at Aberdeen, but he's a man that for me is one of the linchpins of that Celtic side, and he's been developed in the Scottish game. There was a point yesterday or the day before on the bulletin, Kevin Graham, who I think will be getting involved at some point this evening via social media, and he pointed out about Dykes, Lyndon Dykes, and the fact that he didn't rate him. Well, Lyndon Dykes obviously has been looked at by 2 different countries for international appearances for Scotland and Australia. And I think going back to the point you've made there, David, Livingston have done well. They've done well to, stand their ground, because I think Rangers were probably trying to get the guy on a cheap. And it looks as though they're going to get £2 million for the boy.
And I bet you Lyndon Dykes is a roaring success for the other Rangers, Queen's Park Rangers down in London, the team that he seems to be going to now. I'm sure he'll do well for them. Just thinking back to when Ryan Christie joined Celtic, he of course was the fact that took the edge off losing out on McGinn, who went from Hibs to Aston Villa, because I think many people felt that if Celtic had signed John McGinn at the time, then Ryan Christie might not have got a look in. But John McGinn's another one. Celtic were mucking about, trying to drive down Hibs, sort of 1.5 million, something like that. Eventually they met Hibs' asking price, but by that time McGinn had already agreed terms with Aston Villa and went there, and now McGinn's been spoken of as a sort of 35 million pound midfielder. It's extraordinary.
It is, and there is that fear, I think, when you look at a player like McGinn, because I think everybody realised what the boy was going to do. It was the same when we were interested in McCarthy as well, and you knew that boy and the quality his play at that age was going to result in big money moves, and that's exactly what happened when he went down south. It's another case with Hickey and Turnbull, whereby I think Celtic hold all the aces, because we can invest £2-3 million in players like that and bring them in. Does it excite fans?
There's far less risk in going for these guys. You know they can perform in Scotland. You know, to use a well-worn cliche, that a wet and windy night in Aberdeen isn't going to faze them. And I'd far rather Celtic pay a modest premium to get these guys in through the door without any messing about than, you know, investing 2 or 3 million on unknown quantities from leagues in Eastern Europe where there's inevitably a transition period, even if ultimately they prove to be successful.
Julian looks in the mood tonight.
He does.
We've been pretty critical of him since the Kilmarnock game, and rightly so. But he looks in the mood, and his passing's been tremendous. The range of passing, the distribution's been excellent. And I know how difficult it is to play a pass on that pitch, Declan, especially a 60-yard pass. I wouldn't even try it because that pitch, it might look big on the TV or when you're at the game, but try running about it. So Julian, fantastic pass, great finish by El Yunusi, and a superb start for Celtic. We've had a couple of other chances as well. I think going back to what you said, Declan, we could maybe get into the realms of 4-0 at half time.
We could possibly, but certainly look in the mood, which is a good sign. I mean, as we touched on earlier, questions about morale in the dressing room. Doesn't seem to be a morale problem with that team just now, because that team looks hungry, as if it wants to send out a message.
I think the opposite would happen. If you were let down by a teammate, Declan, you would be frustrated and angry, of course, but it would drive you on to get it back into action and then, you know, repay the fans for their patience as well.
100%. And these guys are professionals. They're paid to do a job, and that's what they're out to do. These guys will want to qualify for the Champions League, and this is the first step. So it's a case of just go out and get your business done. Don't leave anything on the pitch tonight.
Now, before the game kicked off, Declan, we were looking at some of the entertainment that was being provided on the old season ticket, and it's maybe something we'll look into ourselves and get someone in with a guitar and give us a few tunes before the game. What do you reckon?
I think Liam McGrandles would be a good shoot if the big man's watching. Hit us up. But that goes as well for John McLaughlin, if he's listening too, if he wants to jump on. I know he's Celtic's favourite just now, so
Danny Kelly's another acoustic chanter who's been on a Celtic state of mind. The session he gave us was a tremendous day at Stirling. That was a poor challenge actually, so it is within range. There's a few of our players who could strike it from there, so Celtic's all Celtic to the point where, as you say, this could really get to the stage of let's give a Yeti a run out, you know, let's get Roderick in, you know, second half obviously, but it's a good opportunity, isn't it?
It is a good opportunity. Maybe even if Turnbull does come in, there could be questions around Tom Roderick's position in the squad, because I would say the two of them are maybe a wee bit more similar to each other.
Right.
But and watching the kind of comeback video from David Turnbull, the boy's a good professional footballer that wants to play, so I wouldn't have any problem if he was to sign for Celtic.
Roderick again has been discussed many times this week. It's where does he go from here? If he can't break back into the Celtic side and we offload him, then perhaps Turnbull would be a good replacement in the squad for him, you know. And he might push for a first team place, because I don't think Roderick is. I don't think he's in the frame at all. Another chance for Edouard, and I can see more goals in this first half.
It's been a while since Tom Rogic had a really effective game for Celtic. You know, when he starts, he rarely finishes a match. When he comes on as a substitute, he struggles to make, and he has struggled in recent times to make an impact. We all know what he can do. He's got magic in his boots. When he's in the mood, he's a game changer. He's a player with a bit of X factor. But I would imagine he's one of the higher wage earners at Celtic Park. And if he's not contributing on a regular basis, then I think they'll look to move him on. I hope not, because he's one of my favourites. But I fear he may be moved on if he can't establish himself on a more regular basis in the first team.
It's like you say, though, David, I think as a boy he's very talented. We've got some great memories of Tommy Roderick. But when was the last telling contribution? I think there was a game last season against Livingston. Yeah. Largely since Neil Lennon's come in, he's been a bit anonymous, isn't he? And every passing season, without the games and without those moments, his transfer value is plummeting.
There's probably a point where we're looking at maybe £10 million for him, but as you say, he's just not been a big feature. And that is worrying in terms of if he is going to get moved on, who would maybe want him and what kind of price are you going to get?
Remember when he re-signed 2 summers ago, everybody was absolutely ecstatic. I mean, it was seen as a real coup to re-sign him at the time, and there was lots of interest from other clubs. And to be fair, Tom and his agent were both really, really respectful about Celtic in terms of respecting the club, respecting the institution. He made it quite clear he wanted to remain at Celtic. A deal was done, but he's just never he's just never recaptured the form that he showed a couple of years back.
He has not. It would be a shame for a player of that calibre, but the time may come. And Turnbull, I just think for that price, an emerging talent, and there was always that question mark. There always is around injuries of that type. Will he come back? It looks as though he's slotted right back into the
Celtic need to go get him, particularly if if Incham is moved on this autumn for whatever reason. Celtic may find, they go back to Motherwell, Turnbull's price has gone up somewhat from the 3 million last season. If that's the case, they need to make sure they don't miss out. They need to go get him. Because I think it's been proven time and time again that these guys are sound investments. If they're nurtured, mature at Celtic, you can sell them on at a significant premium in the fullness of time. But let's not lose out on a guy like Turnbull for the sake of a few 100,000.
You're absolutely right there, David. And Facebook user coming through to let us know that the format's looking great. Thanks very much. We're always striving to improve that all the time. You'll see us making changes where necessary. And a lot of that's down to feedback, so keep the feedback coming in. We've still got some comments coming through. Joe McKenzie via YouTube, thanks for getting involved. Joe, everybody that's watching this, get involved by registering. Subscribe to us on YouTube because we're growing on a daily basis. The content is increasing. I think this is our 4th live broadcast of the day, some of which will also be sent out on podcasts via Spreaker, iTunes, etc. Joe McKenzie is saying that Turnbull in, hopefully, seems like a popular choice. It's not as though maybe in the past we've been using other markets or dipping into other markets, and fans were quite happy with that because Scottish players were perhaps not as fashionable, but it's about back to basics now, is it not?
Imagine if we could get our business done nice and early this transfer window with, let's say, Turnbull, Duffy and Douglas all in the door and no exits or one exit at the very most. You'd just feel much more comfortable about the strength and depth of the squad and just get everybody settled before some of the real hard challenges begin. We don't want to be going in with untested players into a third qualifying round away from home against difficult opposition.
Well, I think that's our second goal. Excellent. Is it an own goal? Is it Edouard? But I think it's a great point you make there, David. That would be solid. I don't think you'd have any complaints if you were to bring in 3 players of that kind of calibre. It's been a big criticism over the years, isn't it? We go into our campaigns, still a couple of players short, we then wait until January. Sometimes we can't get the deals done, we bring in a few loan deals. If we were to bring in the 3 players you've mentioned, I don't think there'd be any complaints. 2-0 Declan. You were saying it could be a cricket score earlier on. That's an own goal, but obviously this is going to open wide up now, isn't it?
It will. Good to see Al-Hamid getting in the attack there. Just a couple of minutes.
How well are we using the wings?
Really well. And again, we're talking about how well Frimpong goes forward. That was a great ball across there from Al-Hamid. And just a couple of minutes before that, it was great defending from him in the box to just win the ball coolly. Then played it back to Julian and get it away from the danger zone. So good to see Al-Hamid getting in the attack. Up the park and setting up a good goal there for Edouard to put the pressure on the defender.
It's just great to see that kind of fast, free-flowing movement, David, because everything we've seen was the opposite at Rugby Park. We could barely string the passes together. We were out of ideas.
Absolutely. I wonder how much wider the Celtic Park pitch is than the one we saw at Rugby Park 10 days ago. But I mean, the KR Reykjavík players are struggling to keep pace with Celtic at the moment. It's quite an old team, the KR Reykjavík team. I think there's a half a dozen players over the age of 30, and they look some of them look pretty gassed already.
Be interesting to know how many of the players were actually involved last time round 6 years ago, because it's one of the things, as you say, the personnel in the Celtic side changes so much when you start looking down even the 9 in a row. The changes in personnel is quite astonishing. But a team like Reykjavik, they're not going to have the churn rate to such a degree, are they?
You would think not. I have no idea how many of the players survived from that outing 6 years ago. But as we said, a huge churn rate at Celtic in that period.
El Yunus is looking in the mood, and I'm delighted with that because I'm his biggest champion, but also his biggest critic. So it's great to see that he's on form tonight. And keep the comments coming in. Joe McKenzie reckons that we should sell Encham and bring in Turnbull, but hopefully we can keep both. I mean, obviously that would be the ideal scenario. It's difficult to keep players happy, which would be a problem if you're bringing in another midfielder and Encham and or Roderick are not playing. It's going to be difficult to keep them happy.
Soro's still sitting there too.
Good point. He's one of the guys that's missed out tonight, Declan. Soro and Klamala suggested, without any inside information whatsoever, that they might have been legacy signings under Neil Lennon. The work might have been done. And what I mean by that is, just as we're lining up another corner, what I mean by that is we all know that, Craig Burley and Paul Lambert came in under Wim Jansen, but the work was done by Tommy Burns previously. The files were already filed and Davy Hay had done the scouting. Could it have been that Klamala and Soro were already on our kind of radar?
Possibly. Project signings. Another guy to add to that is Luke O'Connell, who I'm sure everybody, after watching him in the friendly game, was very impressed. Now he was part of the squad for tonight. So he's another guy that could go in there and do the job for you in central midfield. And Ewan Henderson's still in the books.
Yes.
So there's a plethora of talent there that you could still put into that position.
I always remember Liam Henderson being a player that was favoured by Neil Lennon, wasn't he? But obviously he left after Lenny left. But, I had high hopes for Liam Henderson.
Yeah, and he's gone on to distinguish himself elsewhere in the meantime, hasn't he? In Serie B and Serie A in Italy.
The question is, and I have done my research, I just can't find the guy. Where is Kundai Benyu?
No clue.
Where is he? Is he still in the books?
I've no idea.
He's not listed.
Another, what did he? But I mean, going back to your tweet.
We played them in Europe.
The guys were brought in, and the money we've spent, and just, guys like Bio and Schwed and stuff.
I was criticised a fair bit for that tweet, Declan, but the point I was trying to make was this pre-season, once again we've offloaded millions of pounds worth of assets. I know that some of them were loaned out, but a lot of people were coming back to me saying they still think Schwed's going to come back. They're not going to make an impact at Celtic.
From what I've kind of heard through the grapevine, Marian Schwed didn't look up to it in training and wasn't turning up for language lessons, which you do not do at your gaffer. If Celtic were making the effort to give him that facility and he wasn't taking it on, then he's been given his chance at, which I don't understand why he would want to come to Celtic to not take the opportunity. But at this point in time, I don't see Marian Schwed being part of the plans, because it's a position that we're actually quite short in that right wing position, apart from Karen Dembele. So I don't see where he would slot back in, and I think it would need to be a complete different change of attitude for Marian Schwed.
I totally agree, 100% agree with that. And the other one being Bio, people were saying, if he does well, he'll come back. I don't think so. I think these are loan deals, loan to buy, or run down the contract. One of these ones, and it's another couple of £1 million spent, lost.
Well, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about Celtic. I'm just watching Greg Taylor. Copped a sore one by the look of things, but I think he's going to survive and come back on. But it comes back to what we were saying earlier about the sort of educated punts that Celtic are almost forced to take on players from foreign leagues that they've scouted, and some come off, but a lot of them don't, and then you're stuck with them on the wage bill and you're looking to ship them out on loan. I think we'd all like to see Celtic, investing that money a bit closer to home and paying the money necessary to bring in the John McGinns and the David Turnbulls, without being drawn into protracted and sometimes slightly embarrassing negotiations with clubs elsewhere in Scotland.
I think the thing for Schwed as well is Klamala's showing him up, because Klamala's showing an attitude that you want in your player to go away, get the head down. He said he was getting bullied in training by Julian, bulked himself up. His English looks a lot better, and he's saying to Neil Lennon, I'm ready, I want to play football at this football club. That's what you want, that's the attitude you're going to look in your players.
Well, the question was raised, Declan, when we were looking at the situation prior to Ajeti coming in. Who is Celtic's second choice? I asked the question, who's the second choice striker? And there was a spell there where it was Klamala, due to exactly what you've said there, but also the flip side of that being that Griffiths didn't have the same conditioning. And then obviously there was the other issue with the social media posts, which he's never been seen since. Stevie Mullen was in here with Andy Cameron the other day from St Roch's. they revealed that Leigh Griffiths was using James McGrory Park as a facility for extra training. He was going down there with his brother, who was a goalkeeper, and he was conditioning training, he was shooting training, all that kind of stuff. So I know that the level of fitness that you're talking about in terms of an elite athlete that plays for Celtic is an extremely high level, David, but he was putting the work in his own time to try and maintain that fitness.
It certainly was. It wasn't even just that. I mean, I've got friends that live out that way where he lives, and he was seen out on a bike. He was in Strathclyde Park out on a bike, so he was certainly, doing stuff for his fitness levels. So whether it's a fitness problem or it's something else is yet to be seen, but I don't know the situation at all. And I would like to see him eventually come back into the fold, but when that'll be, I don't know.
Well, every time he warmed up last season, the crowd stood up and applauded the guy. We all wanted to work
that's
for
what
him.
he's got to remember.
Yeah.
There's so much love and support for Leigh Griffiths in and around Celtic Park, including from the manager. Everybody wants to see him be a success. He just needs to show a little more self-discipline than he seems to be able to muster of late, and cut out some of the slightly more daft social media stuff that he seems to get involved in.
What would you do with that, David, as a manager? What would you do with the social media? We know it's a massive part of branding, and there are players who are building their own brands, and they're looking at business interests and enterprises. In a season like this, you don't want any faux pas on social media. Would you ban it? Simple question, would you ban it?
Yeah. I mean, if it keeps players concentrated, yes, but if he's been given a warning not to be posting stuff and he is, it's a case of just heavily fining him. But I don't know why you would want to disobey your manager. If your manager's not happy with an action, take the hint, keep the heat, and just stop, which he hasn't done. It was the first comments that Neil Lennon was critical of, and then Leigh Griffiths' partner then posts something with him bringing attention and lets the Red Tops jump on it. You don't need that attention this season. Keep everything in house and get the business done on the park.
I think, fans will think that he owes it to himself, which he does. Some fans might think he owes it to us. I think he owes it to Neil Lennon. Yeah. I think Neil Lennon has managed them brilliantly. And yes, he came out in the press and criticised them, Declan, and it's never nice to see that. But I think he owes it to Neil Lennon. Neil Lennon has shown a lot of faith and patience in Leigh Griffiths. It would be great if he could repay that by coming back in great shape and contributing again, because he's going to be left behind when you're bringing in a £5 million striker and a Yeti. He's going to be left behind, and at the moment he's fourth choice striker. So I think he owes it to Neil Lennon to come back and make a contribution.
He certainly does. And if Odsonne is to depart Celtic Park next season, hopefully not this season, it is obvious that Leigh Griffiths is not going to be the first choice striker even when Odsonne Edouard departs the building. So what that maybe says to him is he really seriously needs to think about where he's at and what he wants to do going forward, because he's... What age is Leigh Griffiths now? 29? 30?
29.
So
29 now,
he's going to
Declan.
hit that other side of 30, which could see his football career drop dramatically. You don't want to be hitting the other side of 30 and being left out squads and teams.
I'm glad you added that at the end there, because there's nothing wrong being on the wrong side of 30, sir. But I think the one player he needs to look at, Declan, is Anthony Stokes. You look at the deterioration in that boy's career after leaving Hibs. Just look at Stokes. 2 or 3 years down the line, you're a journeyman.
Ended up playing for a team in Iran called Tractor, unless I'm very much mistaken.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, the only way for Leigh Griffiths if he leaves Celtic is down.
Yeah.
And it could be down quite rapidly. Leigh Griffiths owes Celtic, he owes the fans, he owes the manager, but also Celtic owe Leigh Griffiths too. I mean, he's been a great servant to the club. And I just like to see, if do whatever's necessary, ban him from social media, put an arm round his shoulder, chaperone him, do whatever's necessary to ensure that he's there where he needs to be on the day he needs to be in order to give his very best to the team. He needs to be. He clearly needs a degree of special treatment, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. And to bring the best out of him. And I hope that the club can. I hope the club can do that. They probably feel like it's bent over backwards to accommodate him already, but if we need to continue doing that, then we should.
It's a difficult one, David, because we've seen it. We've seen it with Stokesy. We've seen it with Gary O'Connor. We've seen it with Derek Riordan. All in the near history there. I mean, I think the boy Shields that Morton tried to bring Gary O'Connor back into the game.
Did, and he made a muck of that. Very interesting interview with Gary O'Connor in the Scotsman on Saturday. I think piece by Alan Patullo, I think it was, and there's a
good writer,
program. Yeah, very good writer, excellent writer, Alan Patullo. And there's a program on BBC Scotland tonight featuring Gary O'Connor. But I mean, to be honest, when I saw a photo of him, I couldn't believe the amount of weight he'd put on. Apart from anything else, I mean, these guys, gee, the minute they're not playing regularly, wow, watch out.
Or just get them to go on the state of mind diet. Works a treat,
Steady water and not much else.
Yeah, water, 24 hours a day. So keep the comments coming in. It's an absolute pleasure to engage with people who are tuning in via Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. Remember to subscribe on YouTube. Jason Christie, hey Declan. You've got a fan? You've got a fan? Like to rant about Bolingoli, honest, straight to the point, hail, hail, we're Glasgow Celtic. I think the big thing about Bolingoli, everything that's going to be said has been said about him. We're disappointed in the guy, there's no way back. But let's not forget that, some of these struggles that everybody faces from time to time in their life, he's not immune to that. He's not immune to that. And Celtic and the fan base need to realise that we've got a guy in our hands that has been under intense scrutiny for a number of days now. He's been blamed for all sorts. So, if he needs to go, he needs to go. And it's as simple as that. Celtic, first half hour of the game, just as we scored the third goal from a corner.
The big man again.
The big man who took a lot of criticism after the performance at Rugby Park.
He looks happy with his goal. Big Chris Julian doing the Superman after he scores.
To plastic seats.
Yes.
The plastic seats.
The plastic seats.
A big tarpaulin.
The big man got a lot of stick after Rugby Park. Gary Doonan, who commented, don't forget the performances last season against Rangers or Lazio when we're criticising him for his performances against Livy
Even at Hamilton
and Kelly.
I mean, you remember that day at Hamilton, we were really staring at our faces as if we were going to drop points, and he comes up.
He got the goal. He got the big goal. That's right. I remember that.
And we went on to win the game comfortably 4-1. But he's a big player, and I know people were saying tonight they would have probably dropped him. And I looked at Twitter just before we came on. They would have dropped him before they dropped Ayer due to his mistake at the penalty. But he's redeemed himself. I mean, he's came in, he has played a fantastic ball and scored that cracking header. He's probably man of the match at this point in time, just for an assist and a header for a centre half. So Julian's covering himself here in glory.
Redeeming himself, Declan.
Chris Julian he'll have been absolutely fizzing after that Kilmarnock game.
Yeah.
The press piled into him, a lot of criticism, and he's been, thanks to his colleague who shall remain nameless, he's been left to stew on that for 10 days, not been able to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Just reading reviews about how he, allegedly can't cope against robust 6 foot plus, SPFL centre forwards. He will feel like he's got a point to prove, not just tonight, but for the rest of the season. He'll have taken a lot of that criticism on board, and knowing Chris Julian, he's an intelligent guy, he'll be using it constructively to motivate himself.
The big point you make there, David, is after a bad performance, you just want to get right back on that pitch and play, and that's been a frustration over the last couple of weeks there for Julian and the rest of them. What about El Hamid there? Just the experience of taking that guy out without fouling him. Brilliant. Superb by El Hamid.
Bobby, one of the happier chaps that Linton Dykes has left for QPR though, because I know we're getting any more sleepless nights at the Tony Macaroni.
That keeper has spilled a couple of long shots as well, so that's something to look at. Just shoot on sight, it's 3-0. I think we said it could be 4-0 by half time, Declan. If that happens, then it could be any score. But thanks everybody for joining us. We've got Henry Toll. The wee man needs a bit more time to get his head sorted. A lot will depend on Eddie. I think a lot will depend on Eddie, but now that we've got a Yeti stepping in, that takes a lot of pressure off Edward, because there was spells last season where the boy needed a rest, David.
Yeah, although Yeti's completely unproven in British football. That
was a wonderful
close again there. Good move, yeah.
Now, JJ is commenting on YouTube, and obviously everybody's opinions will be looked at and discussed on a Celtic state of mind. He reckons we need three new defenders, and we should get rid of Bambi, and in brackets Ayer. I've heard Ayer being referred to as Bambi quite a lot for obvious reasons.
Straight horse as well as another one.
There you go. I think Ayer is a class player. There is no doubt there is a talent there. There's some raw edges in a defensive sense. He does go to ground. He does wrap himself around players a hell of a lot. However, you know, when you're looking at AC Milan coming in for £27 million, if that is a genuine offer, is that kind of money something that Celtic would turn down for Chris Ayer, a boy who we brought in for a nominal fee from, I think it was Starts in Norway?
Yep. I don't think we would turn it down, but no, I'm an Ayer fan. I mean, at times he is reckless, but he did have a decent centre-half pair now with Chris Julian. On the point of free centre-halves, Neil Lennon definitely maintains he wants another one in the door. To me, it looks as if we're going to go with what we've got in Julian, Ayer, Beaton's still there, and one coming in.
Shane Duffy?
Hopefully. But obviously with Joe departing as well, we are short in that department.
It was another dilemma, I guess, Declan, similar to the situation with Mikael Lustig the pre-season before, whereby there was a player there that we knew could cover right back and centre half. We didn't utilise him a great deal. Brilliant play there by Julian. We didn't utilise Lustig a great deal at centre half. He played there for Sweden, but we needed cover, and we let him go. And it was similar to Simunovic in the pre-season there. You know, we could have a 1 year deal for Simunovic until reinforcements come in, perhaps.
Yeah, Craig Gordon as well let go before we had a plan B or even a plan A organised. But I mean, go back to Chris Ayer. I mean, I think in 5 years' time he will be recognised as one of the best central defenders in Europe. I've just got that feel about him. He looks absolute pedigree. He reminds me a lot of Alan Hansen in his pomp in terms of the way he's able to take the ball forward. I think he does need to tighten up defensively, but I think he will do that. I think if Celtic did get a concrete offer of 20 million plus from Milan or whoever, I think they feel it was time to cash in. But I'm an Ayer fan, and I think he's a player who's got enormous growth potential.
Keep them coming, keep the comments coming in on social media, and Joe McKenzie reckons that Ayer is overrated, so it's all about opinions, and I think that he's a discussion point. I think that he has shown an incredible amount of improvement. A player like Shane Duffy may be the experience that would assist him in improving and continue to develop, but El Hamid may be that player.
Could be, but again though, I'm a bit worried that we do leave ourselves even short in the right back position, because Moritz Boer wasn't the best player, but he played 15 odd games last season, so he was used a lot. And if we do see an injury in that position, we know El Hamid's not got a great injury record. That means you're dependent on young Jeremy Frimpong. So I would preferably like to make sure that El Hamid is kept on right back and right back only, and that we would have an option at centre half instead of having to shift him in there, but he can certainly do the job there in a back three maybe.
The reason we got El Hamid, and I think it's because he is injury prone. He's clearly, when he's fit, he's clearly a class act and a very versatile one as well. Which you did think back to that game at Ibrox last season that you mentioned, Declan, and the game against Lazio in Rome, which was actually his final game last season when he got injured. But I mean, he does bring a degree of calm and reassurance to the defence, whether he's playing at right back or in the middle. But as you said, I mean, last season we had a spell when both Frimpong and El Hamid were injured, and Moritz Bauer was the default option.
Was Bauer as bad as some Celtic fans think?
Great hair, Moritz Bauer.
He turned up at a dinner as well in the Hilton with a clean coat and a kind of cowboy hat on as well. I was looking at a bet.
He was dressed like Inspector Gadget.
And I was just looking thinking, who's that?
I thought he was okay, Moritz Bauer. I thought he did a job for Celtic last season. He wasn't outstanding, but I thought he was a perfectly serviceable right back. I don't think he ever pretended to be anything else. When he came in, he said, "Look, I'm not the greatest right back on the planet," and he certainly wasn't, but he did a job.
Did a job.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we looked at the stats that were provided by Alan Morrison, his defensive qualities were actually better than a lot of people gave him credit for. He was also a great crosser of the ball.
Crossable, yeah.
Yeah, he always got a crossing. But obviously he's gone back to his parent club. And I think when you look at El Hamid there, even when he's going forward, the way he skinned that boy, up the right to win a free kick. We've got this team on the back foot, and we're getting to a point where it really could get to the embarrassing stage, as Declan McConville pointed out about 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago. Do you reckon we'll get another goal before half-time, Dec?
I think so. I would like to, just to kind of, I think you can actually change the team a wee bit if we can do that, but it just depends. I mean, we certainly look in the mood, but this team looks as if they're against the ropes. I mean, they're not going to come back from this, and it's only going to get worse. So I think for Reykjavík, it's probably a case of trying to just sit in now and lock the door.
You forget we've got a goalkeeper who's making his Celtic part and European debut for the club. I mean, we've seen nothing of Barkas, and that was pretty much the case at Kilmarnock as well.
What a ball that was. Absolutely tremendous
Good
pass.
to see Taylor involved in play as well, getting up there too as a ball and fullback.
He's on the deck again. Gary Doonan makes a great point about McGregor, and I know that Gary has got a great insight into the youth development of players at Celtic Park, and he points out that McGregor had a great start in 2014 for about 2 months coming off the right wing. His Celtic career really took off when he tapped the ball into the Rangers net from 18 yards in the 2017 Scottish Cup semi. Nearly 3 years after his debut. That's why we need to be patient with young players. Great point.
Yeah, it's a great point. And even in that Invincible season, he wasn't one of the first picks you'd have put in that midfield three, because you had Brown, Armstrong and Rogic. That would have probably been your three in that season. So even his goal at Ibrox in the 5-1 game, but that goal certainly in that semi-final was massive, and him just then going right into that team.
I remember McGregor missing a great chance for, here we go, cleared off the line. I thought that was goal number 4, looked a certainty.
Looked like an excellent
a great
save.
chance against Mönchengladbach away.
Yep.
Yeah.
And everybody piled into him then, because, I mean, Celtic drew that game 1-1, but they could have won it, because it was a late chance that McGregor missed, and, you thought, well, is this guy ever really going to make it at Celtic? But, my goodness me, he has with power to add.
Excellent save, or was it just knocked straight at him?
Was it a handball on the line now?
Looked like it. That could have been a sending off if it was a handball.
It doesn't look happy at all there.
But we scored from a corner kick again, which is an interesting development, because we went a long time without scoring from a corner, didn't we?
Sure did. And again, if Christie wasn't in the team and everybody wanted Ncham in the team, you don't really see Olivier Ncham take corners, so who would be taking the set pieces in the team? Is the question I'd be asking.
A wee comment coming in via YouTube. Please, everybody who's tuning in, get yourself registered and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Kenny McCormick agrees he has seen Duffy play and he would take no prisoners. Is that what we're looking for?
I think so. We don't really have a commanding centre half there that will just, I think, clear the ball effectively. Julian and I like to play football. Two of them are big guys, but at times when they're put under pressure, they can be suspect.
I mean, it's when we're up against guys like Ogumpo at Hamilton, Lyndon Dykes at Livingston, Kabamba at Kilmarnock. That's where you need a Shane Duffy, some uncompromising defender to go in and help Julian and Aya, who are primarily ball-playing central defenders rather than rugged take no prisoner type. So absolutely, I think Duffy would. I think he'd complement what we have very, very well.
And he knows what the club is as well. I mean, he's a Irish international. He's played at a good stage in the Premier League, and obviously is an international too, and he's supposedly a Celtic supporter, so he come in this season as well. He'll get the gig and know what it's all about and settle in. Well, you're not taking a gamble on a player from a league you're not too sure upon. He's proven in the Premier League, so I don't see why he couldn't come up here and do a job for us.
Kevin Graham, I don't believe the negativity towards Ayer. It's almost as if we are looking for something to moan about. I've seen far worse in a Celtic jersey, so have I.
How much would you estimate that the two of them together are worth? Because if you're kind of looking at 27 million for Ayer, I would say Julian's price tags went up in a year at Celtic. Mm-hmm. So as a parent, how much would you put in those two? 40 million?
I think there's an argument to say that anyone who's in that first 11 possibly with the exception of Scott Brown, is valued at £10 million plus. Because if you're getting a game for a team that is so dominant domestically and hopefully will be making inroads in Europe, would you sell your first choice left back for anything less? No. Because, going out and buying a £3 million left back is a risk. And that's what we've been talking about all week. And I think Celtic have got assets all over the pitch. It's just great when we can use the width as we have been able to do tonight.
This one for even the listeners to get involved in how much they think the two centre halves are worth, because I'm sure opinion would differ if folk don't really rate Ajer, but would maybe put a bigger price tag on him.
Well, at the end of the day, a player's worth what somebody will pay for him.
Exactly.
I'm absolutely certain that if Ajer was playing in the Premier League down south, he'd very quickly, never mind 25 million for Ajer, he'd very quickly be spoken about in a 35, 40 million pound bracket. I really believe that. I think Julian's transfer value's doubled in the time that he's been at Celtic, notwithstanding his struggles against Kabamba last Sunday. So I think 40 million a pair. My goodness, that was an absolute pile driver from Scott Brown, wasn't it?
Trying to recreate that goal against St Johnstone in the Scottish Cup there. Sometimes when he gets a good whack at it and it's on target, it's
fairly put his laces through that one, didn't he?
Yep. 2 minutes added on in the half. But they've been pretty comfortable for this half. There's not really any major problems.
Yeah, it's been very comfortable, Declan, and I think when you're looking at the fact that, getting a high-scoring game like tonight is exactly what Celtic need. It's all about having that confidence back. It's been free-flowing. The opposition isn't great, but you've still got to beat what's in front of you. And, sometimes we've made it difficult for ourselves in the past against so-called minnows. So it's great to see us using the width of the pitch. Do you think Lennon will make a few changes at half-time?
I think so. I think it'd be sensible too. As David said earlier, we've not got cover for Greg Taylor, and we've got a big match on Saturday at Tannadice, back in league action, so he'd probably be a guy I would like to take off the pitch. And it'd be good to give Ajeti, Reykjavík there nearly pulling one back. It was a good strike. Barkas dealt with that quite easily.
Is that the first genuine bona fide save Barkas has had to make as a Celtic goalkeeper? It was a good one.
He hits that well on the volley there.
Yeah, he got down sharply to save it.
I'd be like to see Ajeti make his debut, and even maybe Tommy Rogic come on in the game, but certainly I think Greg Taylor to come off. And obviously Olivier and Cham, everybody is desperate to see him again, so could be another guy that maybe come off for Scott Brown.
I know, David, that you had the opportunity maybe to observe the way that Taylor went about his business when we travelled over to Cluj, and I was hugely impressed with him because he was almost like a leader. You seen him being a leader, didn't you? Yeah. And that was a guy who hadn't been in the squad that long. Mm-hmm. I think he's quite an influential player behind the scenes. And
I think he is. I think he is. You can when you see the players, moving around airports and hotels, you sort of get a feel for who's who and sort of players that just have a feel as to how to conduct themselves and show a bit of leadership. And Greg Taylor's certainly one of those. I think that's one of the reasons why Neil Lennon likes him and sort of progressively warmed to him over the course of last season, because having started out very much as second fiddle at left back, I mean, he's established himself as first choice, and as we've been saying, well, we're now in a situation where perhaps at half time or after an hour, you think about taking him off to make sure that he's fit for Tannadice. Edouard's another guy. That's half time, 3-0 Celtic. Yeah. Edouard's another guy. If the match situation is comfortable, I'd take him off. He's just so important.
He's so important, David. And when you look at the amount of games he played, before the game was shut down last season, when we didn't have that backup that we could utilise. And I think if you're able to give him a rest, then you've got to do it. Now, it's half time. How did you find the first half? It was enjoyable as far as I'm concerned, and I think everybody in the State of Mind studios would agree. Make your comments, ask your questions, get involved in the discussion. Sean Murray: Celtic defenders always get a bad rap from the fans. Just look at Denier Boyata. Any Celtic fan would have them back in a minute, and yet they were always criticised. Now, I take the point actually with regards to Denia. Denia was a player that I thought was an excellent prospect, David. A lot of people say that he only looked good because he was playing next to Virgil van Dijk. I disagree with that. I thought on his own merits he was an excellent player, and we tried to buy him, didn't we?
And he's a Champions League
and now he's a Champions League semi-finalist. Could be a Champions League finalist in 2 days' time. So yeah, I mean,
even Big Boyata's went to the Bundesliga and he's did the business.
He's been a standout for Hertha Berlin in the Bundesliga. Boyata, absolutely.
See, when you look at the situation we had with some of the players that went on and have done extremely well, like Boyata, it's unfortunate that there was a period of time there where Celtic fans, I don't think we knew the full story there, did we, with regards to Boyata and Rodgers? And it appeared as though he went on strike. And obviously, that's all it takes for the Celtic support, me included, to think, well, he's thrown the toys at the pram, the banners come up, he's disgraced the jersey. But all the while, Boyata got on with his job. He got on with his job. He made a comment in relation to people not knowing the full story. And then the plot thickens when you hear other players such as Dembele speaking about someone not being honest, etc. So fair play to Boyata. It's unfortunate that at the time we ended up losing him for absolutely zero, because I think the club were keen to move him on. What we're talking, 8 million at the time.
Yeah, that was the suggestion. And it's so frustrating. I mean, Boyata, never mind 8 million. Boyata's probably an 18 million centre back now. After one effective season at Hertha Berlin, Belgian international, regular for Hertha Berlin, regularly rated as one of the best players. It's frustrating.
And a man that could certainly score a header as well. I mean, how many times did they pop up for us in big games?
You think the number of players in England and around Europe, ex Celtic players at the moment, Denia, Dembele, Boyata, that have acquitted themselves really, really well, and who's
Armstrong and Tierney in the Premier League.
Armstrong and Tierney in the Premier League. Thank you. That I think that transfer value. Tierney's another one. I mean, if Arsenal were to sell him on now, I think people down south have begun to see what he can do. Yeah. There's no way Arsenal will be selling him on for the 20-odd million they paid Celtic. Twice that.
And that is the frightening statistic, when we think it's great to get 20, 25 million, and it is, because obviously the business model lends itself to that, David. But then when you look at the sell-on value of someone like Tierney, if he continues to perform the way he's performing, then the kind of step up from there is either English club to English club, so that the value rockets, or then he's going to one of the really big clubs elsewhere. So Kieran Tierney, for me, he's a guy who there was a lot of there was never any hatred. There was a lot of disappointment when he left, but again, that's died down. Everybody's quite happy that he's performing well now.
Yeah, I was really disappointed when he left. I think the situation was complicated for Kieran by the fact that he was carrying that injury at the time. And I think he felt, well, maybe I don't have another 15 years playing career ahead of me.
Yeah.
Maybe I've got another 15 months or 5 years at best. I just don't know. So I think had he been injury free, I think he probably had given Celtic another couple of years and hung on for 10 in a row and so on and so forth. But I think his hand was forced by the injury situation. Having said that, I was disappointed when he left. I mean, we had all the megaphone stuff with the Green Brigade and so on and so forth, and he really did kind of revel in that role. And to see him go quite as quickly as he did, and it became pretty clear last summer that he wanted to go. I think reading between the lines, that was once he knew Arsenal were in for him with serious money, he wanted to join them. I was just disappointed, because I always said to people down south, no, believe me, Tierney is a dyed-in-the-wool Celtic man. He will not move on easily. And guess what? He did.
Do you think, David, and again, I'm surmising, I have no inside track on what was going on at Celtic at the time, but do you think that the way that Brendan Rodgers approaches his professional career, and he's spoken about it at length since then, do you think that was an influence? Do you think that was a deciding factor in the way that Kieran Tierney started to view his own career?
Possibly, yeah. In terms of Brendan perhaps suggesting to him that he needed to move on sooner rather than later in order to further his career. Yeah, I think it possibly was, and I think Brendan had the ear of Tierney and vice versa. and I think Tierney's another. He's an intelligent lad, very grounded. It's all been well documented, but I think he was taking a longer term view, but also, as we said, I think with the injury playing on his mind, I think he maybe felt, look, if I'm gonna make a big money move and secure not just my future but that of my family as well, now's the time I've got to go for it.
I remember, I think it was at the Maryhill Bertie Hall Celtic Supporters Club evening, that Danny McGrain was asked the question about Kieran Tierney, and he says, well, I don't know what I would have done because no one ever tried to sign me. That was his initial reaction, but then he said that and he was brutally honest, as Danny is, had Kieran Tierney asked him for his advice, he would have told Kieran Tierney that the right move for him was to go to Arsenal. And a lot of people were surprised at that, Declan, but Danny will tell you straight, there is no airs or graces about it. He'll give you an honest answer. And the honest answer was, going back to the point you made, David, the boy maybe got an insight into how difficult the game can be. One, bad ankle injury, one bad knee injury, and you're gone. Or you may...
I remember some of the really heavy tackles Tierney took from, in games in Scotland. Every time he was tackled, collectively Celtic Park would hold its breath, and every time he sort of got up and dusted himself down. But that's very honest from Danny, isn't it?
He's definitely honest.
Aye,
even
honest.
if you didn't want to hear what he's got to say. I remember the first time I ever spoke to Danny McGrain after my book was released, and interestingly enough, Danny was the first person I interviewed for the Quality Street Gang, and he was signing copies. He turned around to me and said, "You still making a living from this?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "That's interesting, because I heard it was crap." And I thought, thank you, Danny. Legendary Danny McGrain. Cheers for that feedback. But yeah, as I say, he'll tell you brutally honestly, even if it's going to upset you, David. But Danny McGrain, legend.
But we were talking earlier on about centre halves. Just Gordon Stackton's caught my eye, and the two guys he had, and Stephen McManus, Gary Caldwell. Yeah. Now, they got a lot of criticism during their time at Celtic, but as a pairing, on big nights in the Champions League and in big games, they did the job. So maybe we have been spoiled with centre halves, because the quality that we're talking about there in Denayer, Boyata, Julian Ayer.
You make a good point. Declan. They were, they were a partnership that, for me, we didn't have a similar partnership. And what I mean by that is a strong central defensive partnership until Denayer and Van Dijk. I'm not comparing the four players. They were unfashionable. Tony Mowbray didn't fancy them, but what he did was he dismantled a central defensive partnership that included a club captain and Scotland's Player of the Year. Yes. And it took us, I reckon, until Denayer and Van Dijk to reassemble a central defensive partnership.
And the guys we brought in, Mistonovic's, Hoyvel's, Leuven's, Ronya's,
again, millions and millions of pounds worth.
They never really did anything. So yeah, I would totally agree there. That was the first real centre half partnership. There was a wee kind of one between Wilson and Ambrose, but nothing compared to what Denayer.
I grew up watching Celtic in the early '80s, and I won't name any names, but crikey, some of the central defenders getting regular games then compared to what we've got now. I think we're doing just fine these days. Yeah, let's give us an analysis, David. I know that when you have been watching this game in the first half, you've been impressed with the way Celtic have started the game, but give us a wee analysis and talk us through what you think might change. I'd be surprised, because it's probably not his MO for Neil Lennon to make any changes at half time. Do you think he will, going back to saving the legs? I don't think he'll make any changes at half-time, because he never does. Very, very rarely does. But I think he'll make changes around about the hour mark. I would like to see Ajeti get a game. So I think Ajeti perhaps for the final half an hour, 20 minutes, something like that. It would be interesting to see Ajeti paired with Odsonne Edouard for a while, but Odsonne Edouard, somebody I'd like to see, given a break, and if he's not absolutely essential to the effort, being substituted before the end. Greg Taylor, we've talked about, perhaps being given a break with Tannadice in mind if the game's safe. And I think the game's safe now, Declan, don't you, at 3-0 at half time?
I think it is safe, and as you say there, Tannadice is going to be a big fixture for us, especially missing out 2 league games. The pressure is on to get points back on the board after missing out 2 games that we're going to need to play catch up to. So Tannadice already looks like the proverbial must-win game, doesn't it? Just bearing in mind the
the 2 games left than we've played as compared to some of the other teams.
And they will be a difficult outfit to face, you know, and a lot of our players wouldn't have even ever played there. So it's going to be a tough game. And they get a good victory at the weekend against Ross County. So I'm sure they'll be well up for it. And again, Neil Lennon's going to come up against Stevie Frail. And I'm sure Stevie knows a lot about Neil as a coach. So that'll be an interesting wee one there.
Yeah. Anybody else you think might feature the second half for Celtic? I mean, it's a strong bench tonight. Klamala, Rogic, Incham. You see some of these guys coming on the second half?
He's always kind of needs to bring on Incham in games. There seems to be a kind of a loyalty there to bring him on. But it would be good to get maybe legs into Tom Rogic and maybe bring on the new signing in Ayeti. But
I think Rogic needs to me, he's a confidence player, and his confidence at the moment is kind of at a low ebb. So I'd like to see Rogic come on, get some game time in the second half, and just build that confidence back up in the way that some of the other guys perhaps have been able to do this evening.
Yeah, and you saw Molan who said that a poor game against Kelly and Julien just completely stole it tonight and come back into a game. So, you know, as you're saying there, if you can get him on, a bit of game time and try and build that confidence once again, we could possibly see Tom Rogic be a bigger feature in the team going forward.
When you look at Ayeti in relation to his kind of stature, a lot of people were comparing him to Gary Hooper and the way that he approached the game. Gary Hooper's a player that, again, Celtic fans seemed to pine for, didn't they? Pine for Gary Hooper. I think he's one of the guys that I reckon probably left Celtic too early. But again, I think Celtic were quite happy to take the fee for him at the time. If Ayeti is that type of player, then Edouard almost comes, and he's very much the first striker, isn't he? And with Ayeti playing off him, then you've got to start looking at possibly in games like tonight playing 2 up front, you know, because I think the disappointment against Hamilton was you're at Celtic Park, you're against Hamilton, which are going to be a club that's going to be fighting in the bottom half of the season, and we beat them 5-1, but play with 2 up front, you know, and just go all out attack.
Well, I think everybody would love to see at some point tonight Ayeti playing alongside Edouard, because that's been heralded as the sort of you know, striking duo that we can field. So I mean, I think even if it's just for 10-15 minutes, I think that would be interesting to see. But I'm torn between giving Ayeti some game time and wrapping Big Oddson up in cotton wool ahead of the we've got another European game next midweek against much tougher opposition potentially. So you know, let's not waste Eddie tonight. You know, potentially 45 minutes when we don't really need him.
You're absolutely right, and Kevin Graham's getting back in on the action via YouTube. Thanks everybody for getting involved. You can comment on Facebook, Twitter or YouTube, and if you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, because we are offering free daily content. We'll keep it free and we'll give you as much as possible. Earlier on today we spoke to Joe Aiken. We also spoke to Declan about the Bertie Auld Celtic Supporters Club that you helped found as well, Declan. So if you want to get involved as well, if you're in a Celtic Supporters Club, get in touch. If you're a sponsor, you want to sponsor one of our shows, get in touch. There are lots of opportunities. Kevin Graham, they're only worth what someone will pay for them. I think AC Milan having the thought of paying that amount of money for Ajer is unbelievable. I think we maxed out on Julian. 27 million, Ajer, unbelievable. Couple of successful rounds in Europe, and it's pretty believable if you ask me.
I agree. Particularly if we qualify for the Champions League. That's where players get noticed. I mean, it's been well documented, but you know, you talk about, you know, Portuguese league, you know, in terms of sort of financial clout and pulling power, you know, being of a similar sort of level to Scotland. You don't see Porto and Benfica selling players on for, you know, 4 or 5 million. They're looking for big money, 20-25 million, those kind of transfer fees, and I don't think 27 million from Milan is a reach by any stretch of the imagination, particularly if we can get through the Champions League this season.
No, you're right. Any changes that you've spotted in Celtic's team in the second half, David?
Not so far, but I've been rooted. My eyes rooted to the television.
He's got a look of the boy about him, isn't he not?
He does,
yeah, that was good hair.
I didn't think Maurice Boyer was as bad as a lot of Celtic fans made out, to be honest with you, and he has agreed to speak to Celtic State of Mind, and so I think it'll be an interesting
That'll be
interview.
very interesting interview. He's a very interesting, articulate guy, Maurice Bauer, with interesting backstory and qualified pilot and multilingual and so on and so forth. So I think it'd be a very interesting guy to talk to.
Yeah, it was great. Was it Edward was getting interviewed that day and he just took over? That was brilliant, wasn't it? He was a player that was much maligned, I think. But as I say, he always got that cross in, and I thought his defensive capabilities. He didn't play many games. I think that's the problem. It certainly didn't start many. Jason Christie, Celtic are walking this. The only thing I'm disappointed at is not enough goals. Well, 3 in the first half, and I think that we'll probably be looking forward to some substitutions. Lenny likes to make the subs at about an hour or even later, Declan. But I think it will be all about saving the legs for next week and also for Saturday as well. You know, Dundee United coming up, another game at home. How do you see that one going? Dundee United are looking okay so far.
But that's what me and David were saying. Stevie Frail versus Neil Lennon again, and Stevie, having worked under Neil for a long time at Celtic, comes up against him, and the two of them, Stevie knows how Neil works, so that'll be interesting. But there's another one.
Early goal in the second half, and it's Greg Taylor.
Excellent.
Brilliant. It's a great start.
Get him on.
That's enough.
That's it. It will be a tough game though. Dundee United have had a good start to the season. Mickey Mellon seems to have taken off well there. Lawrence Shankland hasn't scored yet, but it'll be a tough old game up there. Tannadice is not an easy place to go to, as we've seen in previous years.
A couple of points I would make there, Declan. Firstly, you've raised the issue of Lawrence Shankland not scoring yet. There's a lot of players, and there will be in the future as well, who can't make that step up. So you look at Nesbitt at Hibs, prolific goal scorer for Wraith Rovers and Dunfermline. He stepped up and he continues to score in the top league. The big question will be, is Shankland going to be able to do that? He's an international player now. There's been a lot of interest over the last couple of years. Can he make the step up?
I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, when he's played for Scotland, I've not been very much impressed by him. And Tannadice, I mean, it's a big club, Dundee United, so he's got a good chance to really make a name for himself. But whether he makes a step up or not, we don't know. Obviously great at Ayr United, made the move to Tannadice, helped them get promoted, but whether he steps up in the SPFL will be...
he was at Aberdeen, wasn't he, Shankland?
Yeah.
And Aberdeen for a while.
He never
did anything there.
To break through.
But I mean, to be honest, I think Shankland's a born goal scorer, and I think he, I think in time he will score. It's to Dundee United's credit that they've started the season as well without any goals from him, and if they think that there's still goals to come from him, then that should really give them a lot of confidence going forward. It's a while since we've been to Tannadice, and that will 5:30 Saturday evening. Live on TV, and as we were saying during half time, that already, given the 2 games back that Celtic haven't played, that already begins to take on the look of a in inverted commas must-win fixture. With if we don't want to fall too far behind potentially.
4 years, I think, since we've been at Tannadice. That Friday night game, Big Jozo scored the header, so.
But interesting enough, Declan, I think David will be of the same kind of ilk as myself. Tannadice and Dundee United, they need to be in the top league in Scotland. They need to, and it's great to see the club back actually. And I know it's on merit. If you get relegated and you can't get out, it's all about merit. But I think back to Dundee United and the great club that they were, largely built around Jim McLean in the way that he approached the youth development at Dundee United with an iron fist or an iron rod. But it worked for him, didn't it? And I mean, when you look at that team that obviously did so well, winning the league, doing so well in Europe, there was another wave after that who promised so much, with Christian Daly, Andy McLaren, Duncan Ferguson and others. But what happened with them is a different generation, and they were sold off for big money. So Dundee United, were always built on the youth. You know, that's what you always remember about United. I think it's great to see them back. Not so great that I want to see them getting a result against us, but they're a club that need to be in the top division in Scottish football.
100%.
They're a top. I mean, in terms of history, prestige, facilities, they're one of the top 6 in Scotland, Dundee United, aren't they? Alongside Hearts and Hibs, the 2 in Glasgow, Aberdeen and Dundee United. I mean, I think they would be, you know, I'm aware of the sort of history associated with Dundee FC and Dunfermline and some others going back, but I mean, you can't look past a UEFA Cup final appearance and a league championship. You know, I think Dundee United's record in modern times speaks for itself, and it's only recently that they had, when Jackie McNamara was the gaffer there, you know, a really good team with the Gary Mackay-Stevens and the Stuart Armstrongs, and they were all sold off. So it's been a, you know, a minor tragedy what's happened there in some ways. The way the club's gone. It's good to see them back in the top league.
And I think anybody that goes to away games, it's one of our favourite.
I love going to
venues. You know, the
It's a great
Sheridan
wee.
stuff.
It's a great wee
Shade.
ground. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And the only team in season 66-67 to beat us twice.
Yeah.
Dundee United, so there's a bit of history there, but as David says, they're a big club that should be in the division. It's good to have them back, and hopefully Celtic can go to Tannadice and get a result on Saturday evening.
Without a doubt. I mean, we interviewed Matt Wilson fairly recently on a podcast. He spoke fondly of his time at Dundee United, and his memories of Jim McLean as well were quite fond when you listen to that, until he punched John Barnes after that interview. Then he was forced to walk. But it was one of the moments in Scottish football history, wasn't it? One of the fantastic moments.
Never to be forgotten. Yeah.
I know. One of the only excuse moments, but it was real. It was actually reality. Tony Cassidy, 123, Ferencváros or Djurgården's up next. As you said, David, a much tougher test up next for Celtic. If there is a team from those two that you would prefer, which one would it be?
Well, I don't know much about Ferencváros, other than, you know, historically a great Hungarian team. I do know that Djurgårdens have been struggling somewhat in the Swedish top flight this season. So, you know, perhaps Djurgårdens. But I mean, do you have any knowledge of Ferencváros? Any inside track on the Hungarian?
I know the Swedish team won 3-0 away from home at the weekend there, so I mean that's a result that maybe raised an eyebrow. But going back to last season, our performance against the EIK Stockholm was very good home and away.
Yeah.
So going up against a Swedish team maybe shouldn't phase us like it did when we were playing Malmo, etc. So maybe with the confidence of playing EIK Stockholm home and away so well last season, maybe preferably the Swedish team.
I think what we'll do, actually, David, it's a good point. Do I have much information on Ferencváros? No. However, we do have our Hungarian football correspondent, Kevin McCluskey, who writes for ACSOM.net, a Celtic State of Mind's website. Kevin McCluskey, we'll put that question to him. We'll ask him for the gen on Ferencváros. I always just remember them being one of the clubs with a really cool name. Back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, that you thought, they're quite a trendy team. But I mean, when it comes down to it, it will be a tricky tie. And you were looking at home advantage tonight, and I don't think anyone was too worried. But it was all about the early goal, wasn't it? And in the second half as well. But then the way that Neil Lennon approaches the second half, I think, is all about resting players and maybe giving a run to the likes of Ajeti. I'd love to see him making his debut, and Rogic primarily, and then anyone else that comes on, that's fine. But they're the two that I want to see introduced tonight.
Yeah, I think we'd agree for different reasons, but I think they were both. You know, Ajeti purely in terms of the interest and seeing how he potentially plays with in tandem with Edouard and Rogic, because he needs minutes, he needs game time. And you know, we're talking at lunchtime in the ACSOM bulletin about the lack of a reserve league at the moment in Scottish football, and you know, if guys like Rogic aren't going to play tonight, then when are they going to play?
I know. This is a frustration. You look at the development games played last season. Celtic played 13 development games. Now at any level, that's not enough. No. If you're Tommy Rogic and you're not getting a game in the first team, you're going to become rusty, and then it's hard to get back up to match speed. So yeah, there is a difficulty
I remember
there.
going along to watch the Celtic Colts play Queen's Park at Airdrie last season in the Tunnocks Cup, and Luca Connell playing in that game and looking impressive, and he bossed it in. He kind of bossed things in midfield for Celtic that night. But I mean,
he must be scratching his head because he must be thinking, when am I ever going to play 90 minutes?
I know, he's gone from
It's
first
a
team
really odd
football.
setup.
He looked, even if you go to last pre-season when we played Rennes, he impressed that day as well. You know, he did look good, he looked handy, creative. Kevin Graham, great first half. He missed 2 goals, Kevin. Thanks for letting us know about that, because he was sorting out the wains. Now, bear in mind that a Celtic State of Mind goes out to a worldwide audience. Wains are children to anybody who might be in Vietnam or Costa Rica or any of these other places that tune in. And now it's a training exercise for Celtic. Well, it is. Nice to see Barkas making a save, and another just a moment ago. And I think, you know, you look at Barkas, he's the most expensive goalkeeper Celtic have ever signed. You know, and I don't mean Foster, because we didn't sign Foster for the 13 million, but that's the most investment we've ever made in a goalkeeper. I think I was quite disappointed when Foster didn't come back, but the boy Barkas looks like the real deal.
It's good that we were looking in that market too, to go and take a guy that's got experience of winning championships in Greece and playing Champions League football. It was good that we branched out a bit and never kind of stuck to a guy like Joe Hart, who I seen join Spurs today. So it was a good guy to get in the door, and a statement of intent. You know, the 2 guys were brought in permanently, and Ayeti and Barkas, £10 million, a lot of money for Celtic to actually spend in a window.
They're both classic blueprint Celtic signings. They're just the sort of profile of player that you would hope Celtic would sign. I mean, we talked about Shane Duffy earlier, Barry Douglas, David Turnbull. They fit the bill as well. But Barkas and Ayeti, ideal. You know, signed from, you know, a good standard of football with a track record in Switzerland and Greece respectively, international appearances and so on and so forth. So and with you know, young and with a potentially really significant resale value as well. So, you know, absolutely archetypal Celtic profile signings, I would say, both of them.
Francis Green comments that Big El Hamid looks class. Yes. Can't argue with that. Never loses the ball. Hope he stays fit. Versatile too. He just gives a calmness to that defence as well, doesn't he? Because he is so cool on the ball. Doesn't panic. He goes forward and he looks very comfortable on the ball when he goes forward as well, offensively.
I remember when he arrived, he was kind of the least heralded of the signings last summer. And, you know, he kind of met with a wee bit of apathy when the club signed him. But I mean,
he was going, why are we signing
yeah,
this?
why are we signing him? And people making comments about the agent who put him Celtic's way and so on and so forth. But he's been really impressive. It's just been a shame he's not been able to, you know, keep himself, you know, injury free as much as we would have liked.
If Scott was actually at the team, he'd be maybe the guy I'd give the captain's armband to. I know he usually goes for Callum McGregor, but El Hamid, the way he even conducts himself in the part, as you say, he probably brings a real calmness to that back four. I think if you're ever maybe needing to pass the armband on, it'll probably be
the way he speaks when he's interviewed as well. He's clearly, you know, he's intelligent.
Yeah,
he says the right things. He's respectful. Really impressive guy.
Nicholas McDade reckons that this is our strongest 11, and when you look at it, you know, with that formation, it's difficult to argue. I think some people, when they seen Frimpong and the impact he made when he first came in, David, was electrifying. What happened with Frimpong? Was he told to change his approach because he was leaving players in his wake when he came into the starting lineup? But that side of his game we don't see as often now, do we?
I think that's a fair comment. He kind of looked like he was almost a kind of electric eel when he first came into the team, and he was winning challenges that he had no right to win. There were times when Celtic played, and you know, it looked like, compared to his teammates, Frimpong was almost sort of supercharged and absolutely buzzing about, and really eye-catching performer, and he certainly, you know, caught everybody's imagination last season with some of his interviews as much as his on-field performances. But I agree, we've not quite seen that same level from him. Perhaps towards the end of last season and so far this campaign too.
How on earth did he keep that in?
I don't know.
He had no right to keep that in. He had no right to keep that in, Declan. Edouard's a special talent. You know, the big thing for me will be keeping that boy, keeping him at Celtic. I mean, you've looked at the effect of Dembele. If he was to move from Lyon, what kind of price tag were you looking for if Dembele was to leave Lyon?
I think 60 million easily. The other night, I mean, big game, real pressure. Just take him on and be so cool twice in front of goal. it was just excellent when he came on, and you kind of looking at it and thinking to yourself, I feel quite lucky to watch that boy play for us, because he is that good and he will step up a level again.
Yeah, he will. But you're almost looking at a blueprint. You're looking at Edward following the same kind of route, you know. And there's a limit, I guess, to how much Celtic will command. But there's been a figure of £40 million mentioned. Is that the maximum that we would expect for a player like Edward?
I think so.
I think if when he's been sold from a club in Scotland, that probably is around about the ceiling, unless Celtic qualify for the Champions League this season and he does something truly spectacular, and then his value might rise. Otherwise, I'd say 40 million is probably about the ceiling. But as you said, Paul, with all that's at stake this season, it's just so important we hang on to him. He's the talisman. He's the go-to guy. He makes things happen. Very, very important we hang on to him.
Looks as if Olivier and Cham's going to come onto the pitch. So.
Who would you bring off for Encham? Would you give Bruni a rest?
Maybe take Scott
McGregor?
off for her. But I don't know. I mean, you could even take one of the wingers off and play Christie on the right hand side. To me again, talking about Greg Taylor being our only option at left back at this point in time. James Forrest is only kind of credible option.
Correct.
On the right hand side.
So that single point of failure, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Gary Doonan mentions that the KT deal at the time was a good deal for all. The proof is we have continued to win all the trophies put in front of us and had a successful Europa League campaign. Great point. We sold Tierney, but we still continued to dominate the domestic tournaments that we participated in, and we did okay in Europe. I think the Copenhagen was a massive disappointment, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I remember that. I was in Copenhagen. I remember at halftime chatting to some people and, saying we've absolutely got the beating of this mob. And even when they they finally emerged from the game with a draw, I think we all felt on the bus back to the airport very, very confident that we'd beat them at Celtic Park. But they, in fairness, they looked a good outfit at Celtic Park, and they gave Manchester United a run for the money, having seen off the Turkish team in the previous round. So perhaps a better team than we gave them credit for. But very, very frustrating to be eliminated by them, if only because we then saw what they went on to do in that competition.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I think I've mentioned as well, though, David, that had, you look at the fixture, the Man United fixture, you think, wow, that's the kind of game you want to be involved in. Yeah. But then in this season of seasons, when you're already playing a Scottish Cup from last season, it would have really just got in the way, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. It would. And I mean, Celtic being involved in one-off Europa League games in Germany, and it's all very well for Manchester United. The English season is over. Ditto Manchester City in the Champions League, but the Scottish season is just beginning. It's a particularly important season for Celtic. Things have already been disrupted somewhat as Scott Brown goes off for Olivier Ntcham. So perhaps the Copenhagen elimination, with hindsight, was something of a blessing in disguise. I think it would have been a massive distraction right now, still being involved in that comp.
I just felt, looking over the two games, Celtic, the frustration I feel, David, was that Celtic weren't at their best for large parts of both games. We didn't show what we could do. And that was a frustration for me. But as you say, with hindsight, you look at that and you think, well, another two games against, or a tie against Man United would have been the last thing on our minds at this moment in time. Yeah. Keep the comments coming in. We are going live for Matchday with a Celtic State of Mind on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. If you're on the YouTube, make sure that you subscribe. It's free. Everything we do is free. We don't ask for any subscription payments for the content that we're producing on a daily basis. And Joe Porter, it's all good. But to be honest, this Icelandic team are rubbish. That's a fairly straight to the point analysis from Joe.
I think he might be. Not too far off the mark. I mean, they've offered little. I've tested Barkas on a couple of occasions, but we've kind of got what I expected this evening, Paul. I mean, I was hoping Celtic would turn in a performance similar to the one against Hamilton in the opening league game, make use of the width of the pitch, get an early goal against Reykjavík, which is exactly what they managed to do. And they've not really been troubled at any stage this evening. It's been a very, very comfortable outing.
Not quite sure what was going on there, but we got away with
Good
it
to
at
see
the
the
back.
goalie come off his line there. We touched on John Fallon earlier on, who sit with quite a lot at away games, and it was one of his frustrations with Fraser Foster.
Right.
A guy of his height and stature would not come off his line at 6'7". So I think Big John's quite happy to see that we've got quite a kind of commanding goalkeeper in Barkas that wants to come for the ball.
I love Big John, the original Holy goalie. Turned 80 last week, didn't he?
Yes, we had a lunch on Friday.
Is he in good fettle?
He is in good fettle. Still one of the referees, etc. But he's still in good form at the ripe old age of 80. Still playing golf as well. So
I think we need to get him into the studio, Declan. He's always good for a chat on Celtic, all things Celtic. And Ken Walsh is pointing out that the Quality Street gang helped Adele out. Yeah, it's true. You heard it here first. Adele was a big fan. So don't you mind what Danny says. And it is true. I mean, there's, Leslie Laird, who was part of Jeremy Corbyn's team, was a big fan of Celtic Smiler. So you just never know where these books travel, David. I know for a fact that Andrew Innes out of Primal Screams got a copy of the Quality Street Gang, because I gave him it.
Right.
I don't know if he wanted it, but I gave him it anyway. So yeah, the books travel far and wide, as do Celtic's traditions and the tales and the fairy tales, and that's something that we're doing all season, is we are creating history by going for 10 league titles in a row. I always ask the question, Declan, if we are able to win the 10th title in a row, what next for Celtic?
well, that's a big question. In terms of domestic success, we seem to have just completely blown every club out the water, and we could be going for 10 in a row, winning a 5th treble in a row, which is still in the cards. I mean, we're up for this 4th treble in a row. We need to navigate through 2 Scottish Cup games. But whether the question is to then look towards a different league and structure, or continue to dominate in Scottish football. But if you're going to remain a Scottish club, dominating Scottish football isn't great. And we've spoken about European football. You're only going to get so far before the big boys tear you apart, as seen last Friday evening with Bayern Munich and Barcelona. There was a golfing class, and we have that golfing class, and it just shows you even a club the size of Barcelona can be torn apart by the riches of European football.
Well, the situation is not going to change in Scotland, Declan. I think that's my biggest concern, and I'm banging a drum constantly for Celtic to get out of the game. People disagree with that. I think that Celtic can only maximise their potential by playing their football elsewhere. And, the coronavirus and the lockdown and everything that's happened, and the effect that's going to have on numerous clubs all around the globe, might be the reason that Celtic are given that opportunity. But we will wait and see. We've spoken in detail with the likes of David Lowe, who is a financial expert, and he agrees.
Yeah, and I think it's very important that Celtic maintain a presence at the European top table, which they've been able to do quite effectively from a sort of administrative point of view. I mean, Peter Lawwell's always represented when it comes to restructuring decisions in terms of European football. Talk of perhaps a fast track route to the Champions League as Ayeti begins to warm up. Talk perhaps of a fast track route to the Champions League teams for Champions League group stages for so-called historic teams, teams who've won the Champions League in the past, and clearly Celtic would tick the box in that regard. I think even some of the most moneyed and storied teams in the big leagues in Europe want to see the likes of Celtic, Benfica, Ajax represented in the Champions League. If it's just Bayern Munich playing Barcelona or Real Madrid playing Manchester City, it's fine, but it becomes awfully one-dimensional. Where's the romance in that? I mean, Ajax showed everybody what can be done. Season before last, coming within a hair's breadth of the final itself.
No, you're absolutely right, David, and I think the European prestige that Celtic has at the moment can only be built on if we are at that top table. Now, Gary Doonan has a habit of making good points on a Celtic state of mind, and he's just made another good one. McManus and Caldwell were tested against the best in Europe, yet they got slaughtered. Paul Elliott was a superstar, but he was up against McCoy's, Haitley and Dougie Arnott. And it just shows you all about the kind of perspective of fans. You know, we look at Elliott as a hero, and I was a massive fan. I am a massive fan of Paul Elliott. But it's true, he was never tested. You know, his first European game for Celtic was against Partizan Belgrade at Celtic Park, and you know, we lost 4 goals that night.
The 5-4 game.
Yeah. So it's a good point, and I've always felt that McManus and Caldwell were unfairly criticised in many ways.
Yeah, it's a brilliant point, and we'd love to get back to those nights at Celtic Park that we had under Gordon when we were playing AC Milan, Manchester United, Shakhtar Donetsk, and beating them, you know, because that is where we deserve to be as a football club. And the two that, Gary Caldwell and Steve McManus, to me, were a good centre-half pair and did the business for Celtic. And what was a solid back four, maybe either Andy Sinkle or Paul Telfer in there and Lee Naylor at left back.
But whether Celtic are playing Champions League football or Europa League football, there's no doubt that they are tested at a higher level on a much more regular basis than teams were in days of yore. I mean, when I grew up watching Celtic in the 1980s, and generally speaking, it was 1 or 2 European games at Celtic Park a season, and that was a lot. I remember, I think it was the centenary season, we played Borussia Dortmund. First round, we got Borussia Dortmund.
Yeah.
And beat them 2-1 at Parkhead and got beat away, and that was it. Thanks for coming. See you next year. Europe over.
That's right.
And that was as good as it got.
Yeah, I know. And you became used to that, which was the worst thing about it. You know, you actually became used to having 2 games, one at home, and you're gone.
Yeah.
You're out of Europe. Far, far from being a European side for many, many years. And Celtic are going to make a double substitution. Klimala and Ayeti both coming on. So you're going to be looking at a wee change of formation. We spoke about Beaton being the surprise inclusion in the starting lineup, guys. How do you think he's played, Declan?
Well, he's certainly not really been troubled, but again, no, Mr. Reliable, very cool at the back, and has did his job perfectly fine.
Encham's just strolling it tonight, isn't he? Since he's come on. That's an incredible goal. That's an incredible goal.
That is sensational, by the way. I mean, the skill to go round a man there, and the feet there were incredible. He just tucked it past the goalkeeper.
But Encham before him. Encham before him, you know? Aye, that's astonishing. He has no right to get through that.
4 of them. 5 of them.
Brilliant.
5 of them. Tremendous.
That's a brilliant goal. And I think he might be one of the departures off the pitch with Klimala and Ayeti coming on, so that's a decent wee leaving present before he goes to Tannadice on Saturday.
5-0, excellent. But again, you just want to continue to put them to the sword. You know, I'm ruthless when it comes to things like that.
I hope a photographer got a picture of the aftermath of that goal, because you had Edouard turning away and 5 sky blue shirts just lying prostrate on the ground. Tremendous.
I'm not comparing him to the great Diego Armando Maradona, but remember the picture against Belgium?
Yes.
With the line of defenders just waiting for him to destroy them. But we've got the new man on, Ayeti, and also Klimala, who we've been impressed with in relation to his conditioning. He is likened to a Legia Warsaw Ultra by Kevin Graham on a number of occasions.
He does have that look, doesn't he?
But on Beaton, very comfortable. If he played at Tannadice on Saturday, would I be disappointed? Not at all. He's proven that he can do the job at centre half, and if he Lennon wants to go forward with that,
I like Beaton.
I don't see any
problems. You can see a pass as well. I've hardly noticed Beaton tonight, by the way, and I think that says it all. It's
it
just
does.
the usual understated performance, no fuss, no mess. He just gets on with it.
Maybe gives Julien that wee bit of confidence to play like the kind of searching ball as well that he gave Elyounoussi in the first half, just to kind of play off him a wee bit more.
When you look at it, Declan, 3 competitive games this season. The first one was won on a canter. Second, a bit disappointing, but obviously the various factors came into play there. And then yet another convincing victory tonight. So we're going to be going away happy this evening, with another couple of signings undoubtedly on their way as well.
Yep, 11 goals in 3 games is a good start to the season. Edouard scoring goals for fun at Celtic Park is another positive. If we can make this a real fortress this season, with teams coming and just absolutely battering them, that would really send us in a way to our 10th successive league title.
It would. You know, we're going live for the Celtic State of Mind match day tonight, and we're going out on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Make sure that you subscribe to us on YouTube. Tonight's sponsor is JBM's for all your electrical and mechanical services. If you are interested in sponsoring a Celtic State of Mind, you will be going out to a great number of viewers and listeners. We're up to around the 200,000 per month mark, touching 250,000 every single month, and that is what you could put your brand out to. So get in touch if you're interested, because we do have various platforms that we can offer opportunities on. Sean Murray via YouTube is asking, is a Yeti good value for money, lads? I mean, we're looking at a boy here who's the right side of 25. He's a full internationalist. He's got European experience. Okay, it didn't work out at West Ham, but we've picked him up for a supposed 5 million. I've never even seen him playing live. I would say, yeah, good value for money.
Yeah.
What do you reckon?
West Ham paid about twice that, didn't they? Like 8 million something to sign him last summer from Basel. And I think he was, based on what he'd done up to that point in time, I'd have said he was, by, it sounds ridiculous, but by the English Premier League standards, a steal at 8 million.
Yeah.
A guy, a Swiss international, a guy with a track record of scoring every other game for Basel. So, as we said earlier, I think he's a absolutely classic signing for Celtic. On paper, he ticks all the boxes. Time will tell whether he can score goals in Scotland. I'm pretty certain he will. Great shot from Cham from range there. But if he does score goals in Scotland, then the time will come when Celtic will part company with the Yeti, and they will part company with him for considerably more money than they signed him for. What do you think, Declan?
Well, picking up in that, Southampton paid £16 million for Moylan Housey, so as you say, probably a steal with the kind of price tag that we've got him for, because he was the guy that was banging the goals for Basel. And again, it was a successful Basel team. It won the Swiss League, it did well in the Champions League. So at £5 million, I think it's a good signing. It is that or maybe third record transfer fee for a striker. Edward's sitting in there a Yeti. So he comes in with that on his back, and
how much was Bickerson? Was he about 6 million as well?
Maybe. So he's well. Again, you're putting yourself in that bracket of 3 quality strikers there. So we've maybe reached that level with the bio at 3 million, the couple of million for Klimala. Is it going to be good enough? So we've had to go to the 5. And time will tell, but I think, as you said, classic blueprint signing. He will be the successor to Hudson Edward at Celtic Park, and looking forward to seeing what he can do.
How good has Encham been since he came on, by the way?
Excellent.
I know that we're up against opposition that isn't the strongest, but he is strolling it, isn't he?
He's
enjoying it.
Yeah, he's enjoying it. He looks in the mood. I just, to me, European football ticks the boxes for Encham. It's his stage. I think the style suits him. Perhaps a little bit more time on the ball than in the sort of hurly-burly of Scottish League football. And he certainly looks in the mood tonight. He'll be desperate to make an impression. He wants to nail down a first team jersey. I
would actually like to see maybe start at Tannadice on Saturday, just due to maybe the physicality midfield.
Yeah.
And what we saw at Rugby Park, I thought McGregor and Brown kind of went missing in Rugby Park, like a lot of the players, but I thought the two of them just didn't seem to be up to it at all. So on Saturday maybe Encham starting.
I think every so often you just need to freshen things up. And I think Encham deserves a shot.
See, when you look at Brown, obviously we've played 3 games, substituted in 2 of them, Declan. I don't think he was brought off against Hamilton, if I remember right. Can he be happy with that? Does he understand that due to his age, that is going to be a feature of his game this season?
I think so. I mean, I'm sure he's sat and spoke to Neil about it. I don't know how he's feeling himself physically, but whether he feels he can get through 90 minutes every week, no bother's another question. But he knows he's still got a responsibility of it, the club as captain, and can do what people have spoken about, Jackie McNamara did and Paul Lambert did, and just taking that wee step back, easing his sail off for about 20 minutes to go, taking a seat and make sure he's ready for the next game, because Scott's going to be really important this season, as he is the winner and he knows us how to get us over the line. So I think he will be quite happy.
I think Scott Brown's importance will grow as this season goes on and we get towards the business end of the season. He's as Declan said, he's a proven winner. He knows how to get the club over the finishing line, and I think his influence on and off the field will grow as the season progresses. I don't think he'll be bothered one jot by being substituted in an early season game against Kilmarnock at Rugby Park or against KR Reykjavik here this evening. He knows that sterner tests lie ahead, and he'll prove his worth and his mettle as the season progresses.
On Scott, Paul, could you see him doing what Billy did against Airdrie and bowing out on a high?
I don't know. I think he will continue until his legs can't allow him anymore, I do know that Billy McNeill, after he bowed out, there was a real need for him at the club, because after that you had the near fatal car crash at Jockstein, Sean Fallon looking after the side, and Big Billy would have loved to have come back to help Sean Fallon out, but the question was never asked because he didn't think Billy McNeill would have come back. So I don't know. I think he's a different type of guy. I think he wants to squeeze as much as he possibly can out of his career, and he probably fancies himself for another couple of seasons, including this one. Great run by Encham. What a pass that is as well, and hopefully we can capitalise on it, but he's offside. iConfuser via Twitter is asking me to grab a tinny for him, but I just got to disappoint you. It's old Jamaican ginger beer. There's no alcohol. We're a dry studio in here, so I will enjoy it, but that's as hardcore as it gets here for a state of mind and a Celtic state of mind. So keep the comments coming in. What a front three to have, says Jason Christie, El Yunusi, Ayeti, Eduard. I think we do have an embarrassment of riches, and when you're looking at the fact that Rogic can't get a sniff at the first team, it speaks volumes, David.
It does, but that's why it's so disappointing and frustrating when you get a performance like the one at Kilmarnock, when the entire midfield looked much of a muchness, and you almost felt that regardless of who Celtic brought on, it wasn't going to make any difference. That's why I feel like a guy like Turnbull coming in would just freshen things up. I'd feel much happier about the midfield setup if we had Turnbull in there. And that doesn't mean that we get rid of Encham at the same time. That's in addition to Encham and all the rest.
Even, I don't know, maybe Ewan Henderson or Luke O'Connell to a loan deal to go to Motherwell, because that wouldn't be a bad thing for one of the two that they go to
development
Park.
would be ideal.
Because Motherwell have proven
win-win.
the past couple of seasons that they're a good enough side. They do well under Stevie Robinson. I think he's did a good job there. And it would get them game time, especially Ewan Henderson. I found the loan at Ross County very odd, how he just never seemed to break through and then played very minimal games and came back in January. So I think you could maybe manipulate the deal, get Turnbull in and get somebody out and get game time into the lights, because they're not going to feature a lot this season, these guys.
Kundai Benyu, perhaps. Find them first and then maybe send them to Fir Park.
At Oldham Athletic, I think.
Where on earth is Kundai Benyu? Can anyone who's tuning in tonight tell us where the boy Benyu is? We've not seen him for a long, long time.
Is he still a Celtic player?
Who knows? I'm asking the question.
Did he leave?
I think
I think he'll leave.
I think he left. I'm pretty sure he left.
There was no announcement.
No, it was one of these sort of inch high corner slots in the Celtic View or something, thanking him for his contribution.
It was in the Celtic shorts and not the View.
It was a bizarre signing though. The first time he'd been playing for Aldershot in the National League in England, and talk about pluck from obscurity. It's just a straight. And I remember his first game for Celtic. He actually impressed with some nice touches, but then he just fell off a cliff edge.
He did, but again, I'd love to see someone properly analysing the signing record of Brendan Rodgers, because you think of the great players that came in, and granted, some of them were great, but look at the duds that we signed under the managerial period of Brendan Rodgers. Another one being Gamboa, for the amount of money we spent on Gamboa for the actual games that he played.
And even at that, Paul, the guys that we would have said impressed to me weren't typical Brendan Rodgers signings. They were Peter Lowell signings and Olivier Encham and Hudson Edward, because of our links with PSG, our links with Manchester City. So the guys, Odson and Olivier, I don't know whether they were Brendan signings, and apart the first season transfer window where he brought in Kolo Toure, Scott Sinclair, never really did anything. And again, though, the wage bill at Celtic Park rocketed.
Yes, it did. And when you're looking for the boy Kundai Benyu, I'm hoping that someone who's watching this out there worldwide amongst our audience can tell us where the young player is. I wish him all the best. I just want to know, is he still a Celtic player?
Needs help. Reykjavík with a goal chalked off there for offside. It was well offside, to be fair. No complaints, I don't think, from anyone.
I think it'd be important today as well to get a clean sheet in this game, because the first two games have conceded, so that would be nice for the big goalkeeper in the back four too.
It would be. Now, Joe Porter is talking about a German centre-back. I can't even remember his name. Well, I can, because it's Marvin Compere. And
he's just retired.
Yeah.
He's just retired.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
What did he play, 60 minutes for $1.5 million?
A cup tie against Morton, wasn't it? That day where Glasgow was snowbound.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's one of the lucky ones to beat that game.
Yeah.
But I'm sure Big Marvin probably made his money at Celtic Park. I don't think the way he was treated at Celtic Park, from what I hear, was great by Brendan Rodgers, and it just never worked out for him, I think.
Was he then a Brendan Rodgers signing? I mean, if you bring a player in for a decent enough investment and you just don't play him, it makes you wonder whether or not he was a Rodgers signing. Is he a player that he wanted?
Brendan seemed to be very influential in bringing him in. I remember Marvin Compere talking highly about how Brendan had invited him round to the house and asked what he ate and so on and so forth. And if Brendan wasn't invested in bringing him in, then surely he wouldn't have gone to all that effort. But Compere, he gave an interview to Kicker magazine in Germany a couple of weeks back upon his retirement, and he actually spoke very highly about Celtic, very fondly of the club and his time there, and just said, it just hadn't worked out.
Should I try and get him on the podcast?
That'd be a great addition to the podcast.
The club he was at in Germany, and he wasn't doing anything presser-wise, but maybe now that he's chucked it, it might be. I think I've got a wee link for you too, as my pal used to be his babysitter, so I can probably sort that one out.
Declan is a man. He's a man in the know. He's a man in the know. Yeah, let's get a wee interview with Marvin, see what he's got to say about his time in Glasgow, because it was an unusual signing, that's for sure. But keep the comments coming in. Where is Kundai Benyu? That's the biggest question of tonight. It shows you how kind of easy tonight's game has been, that we're asking you the question, but it would be interesting to know if he's still at Celtic. Gary Doonan comments that Jamesy Forrest has been 20 years at Celtic, 11 in the first team. Testimonial, question mark? I don't think anyone would argue with that.
No, I don't know what kind of crowd you would draw in, because Jamesy has got a lot of bad rep from the Celtics, but I would certainly go to James Forrest testimonial.
He deserves a full park head, James Forrest, for his testimonial, and he deserves the best possible opposition the Celtic can get, because, I mean, he's like, I actually don't understand. I mean, the bad rap that he gets from some of the support. I know people complain about him going missing sometimes in big games, perhaps not fully committing to challenges occasionally, but I mean, I think he's been a wonderful servant to the club and has behaved in the right way. And a testimonial certainly a no-brainer, and I'd like to see the best. If they can get Liverpool, go get Liverpool. Whoever they can get, Manchester United, something like that, and ensure that we get 60,000 in for the Prestwick Pele.
Yeah, the Prestwick Pele, I like it. Kevin Graham, Encham is looking that player at your five-a-side who is miles better than everyone else. I know the feeling. Our that guy in the Sunday League who played at a higher level and you can't get near. He is bossing it, isn't he?
He is. He's a class act when he wants to be a class act. And I think recently, certainly since the turn of the year, he's just been exceptional. And I would like to see him in the team eventually and getting a good run of games, because he's a good footballer, and I think he could be really important this season to us.
He's definitely a player that, if you think about buying a player like that right now, if you were to go and buy him at this moment in time, you would be chuffed to bits if this was his first game. You're looking at him, you're thinking to say, how much would he actually cost in the open market? So he's a massive asset to Celtic, and I think with one eye on the Scott Brown developments in terms of him winding down, it would be madness to let Encham go. But then again, if they dangle the carrot, the £20 million carrot in front of you, Declan, who knows what might happen?
It's such a worry with this extended transfer window this autumn, open to 5th of October, because it really we won't. That's another heavy tackle going in. We won't know until the Scottish season is very far advanced exactly who we've got for the long haul this campaign. And if somebody comes in with 40 million for Edouard or 20 million for Incham or 27 million for Aya on the 4th of October, it may be hard to say no, but by that time, it's too late to bring somebody else in. So that's why Celtic need to be proactive and go out and get the Shane Duffys and get the Barry Douglases and get the David Turnbulls now, while the going's good. And if we can hang on to everyone in the squad, then that's absolutely great.
Yeah.
And it may be that COVID-19 finances dictate that Celtic have to take an offer. If we still haven't got crowds in, come the first weekend in October, then maybe we do accept a big offer from somebody. But let's plan for the worst and accept the best if it comes. And planning for the worst means making some signings now from a position of strength.
Yeah.
If you were given the dilemma where you had to choose between Edouard for 40, Encham for 20, and Ayer for 27, which player do we let go?
Incham, due to the cover in that position,
Yeah, I agree with that.
because Ayer and Edouard are first team starters. I know people will say that Olivier Incham should be starting, but we know we've got 3 good enough players that can play him in midfield. We've got Tommy Nojic there. I've spoken about the other guys that are there that can play in that position. Connell, Sorrow, there is depth there. If you sell Christopher Ayer, you are leaving yourself seriously short. And if you sell Odsonne Edouard, there should be a mass riot at Celtic Park, because we don't want him to go. We want him for this season because he's going to be so important. So there's another one.
You've heard it here first. Declan McConville wants to start a riot at Celtic Park. Should
all.
Edouard leave the club?
No,
El
not
Yunusi,
at all.
he's the boy that, as I say, I champion him, but I criticise him because we know he can do so much better, and he's proved us tonight that he is, and he could be a very, very important player for Celtic this season, David.
Absolutely, and he's got El Yunis is another one with a bit of X factor about him, a bit of star quality. He showed in patches what he could do last season. Had injury problems. Impressed in pre-season, and he's impressing again tonight, albeit against a modest standard of opposition. But he's one of the key guys, and obviously, as we've been saying, he's played in the past with a Yeti in Switzerland. So it'd be really great if they could rekindle that partnership to good effect.
Without a doubt, Blue Lucene is informing us that Benyu is on loan at Helsingborg. I thought that loan had finished. Is he still out there? Does Celtic know that he's still out there?
I don't know, maybe.
Steady.
Kevin Graham, still at Celtic, last seen on loan at Helsingborg, so he's still with Celtic. Kundai Benyu, when does the...
I wonder if he was staying with Henrik over there.
Henrik? Well...
Maybe he's buying Lenny's snus and bringing it back for him from Sweden.
There you go. That's the job he's doing out there.
Could be doing that.
Joe Porter reckons that Bio is another shocker. I don't think Bio will be back in a Celtic jersey, and I would suggest that Sved is in the same boat. And also, when you look at when 10 in a row happens, a lot of the Celtic's big players will leave. It will cause a huge rebuild job. Do you agree with that?
That's an interesting one, and this is why I worry about people kind of treating 10 in a row as an end in itself. 10 in a row is important. That's full time, 6-0.
6-0, comprehensive.
6-0 in our group chat, by the way.
I didn't expect it to be as comprehensive as that, but
Nor
a
did
fantastic result.
More comfortable even than I thought.
And so when you're looking at this, I mean, El Yunusi, hugely impressed with him.
Mm-hmm.
I would hope that the fact that he has that relationship with Ayeti, maybe from their days at Basel, will help both players.
Yeah.
It might help Ayeti to settle in, I would hope. And, if El Yunusi plays like we know he can play, he'll be a key player for Celtic this season.
He will, and just going back to what we were talking about, looking to this season, but also beyond that. I just to me it's so important that Celtic that Celtic make a decent fist of Europe this season and get to the Champions League stages if they possibly can. It's going to be a lottery. We've got a series. We've got 3 one-off games potentially. Then it's a 2-legged playoff to qualify. One fears a difficult away tie in the sort of third qualifying round. But I mean, Celtic will have to negotiate that if they want to get to the Champions League. But I just feel for the prestige of the club, for signing players, for looking beyond 10 in a row, for making sure that we hang on to the Callum McGregors and the James Forrests, for beyond the 10 in a row season, for making sure that we continue to build from a position of strength and dominate. Not just Scottish football, but look to further horizons in the years beyond. You spoke, Paul, about Celtic potentially looking beyond Scotland in due course. I think in terms of moving to England, I think that ship has sailed. I think I don't think that will ever happen. But I think some sort of European setup is eminently feasible and envisageable at some point in time. Perhaps some sort of tiered league where you've got the absolute biggest teams in the from the TV leagues, big money TV leagues in the top tier, and Celtic perhaps in a second tier or something like that. But I think that you feel the tectonic plates of European football beginning to shift. And I tell you what, Peter Lowell is well aware of this. That's why he makes sure that Celtic's represented at these kind of European footballing groups, and it's his job as much as anything to make sure that if there is an opportunity for Celtic in that regard, that the club is in there, and that the historic importance of clubs like Celtic, like Ajax, like Benfica, like Porto, like Feyenoord are taken into account as European football changes.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and there's going to be clubs in the same boat as Celtic, David, who will want that change all over Europe. I'm just watching Gordon Strachan giving these post-match analysis there, Declan. Remember, we've seen him at the beginning of this year in Falkirk, and he was an interesting character. I liked him a hell of a lot, actually. And when we were having our meal, he was moaning at me for not eating my meat, and made sure that I ate all my vegetables. And because I didn't eat my meat, he gave me his cheesecake. So there you go. He's a good guy, Gordon Stratton. And he's a massive James fan. He loves a bit of James. And he's really good friends with Tim Booth. Yep. He is an interesting guy.
He spoke very well that evening. I remember he was very, very good. On the same bill with Derry Pelly, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yes, Paddy McCourt. And we were asking him, beforehand about certain players that impressed him, as youth players at Celtic. And they were talking about Callum McGregor, in actual fact, as a very, very young player, being at Celtic, he would have been an underaged player at that point in one of the youth teams. Paddy McCourt made the point that there had been a lot of press and a lot of buzz and hype about Islam Farouz, and Strachan said that boy was never going to make it. That was very interesting.
I remember him saying.
Very, very interesting. Farouz was never going to make it, and Celtic, it was the deal of the century when Celtic got a fee from Chelsea. He was proven right. Proven right. We're going back to defenders that Celtic fans weren't big fans of, Declan. Gordon Strachan's another one. Got a bad rap from a lot of Celtic fans, didn't he?
He did, and I don't know why. I mean, 3 successive league championships, last 16 in the Champions League. They won cups. To me, Gordon was a great Celtic manager and should be given a good level of respect from the Celtic supporters, because in his time at the club, he won. And that is all a Celtic manager can do, is win trophies and win championships. I think his 3 in a row was the first time we did that since Jock Stein had accomplished 3 league titles in the bounce. Even Martin Neal couldn't do it. So I think Gordon's, and what he did at the club should be well heralded, and he should be given a lot of respect by the Celtic supporters.
Let's have a look at some of the comments coming in from our viewers on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. We're going to be with you for about another 10 minutes, just talking about a very resounding victory tonight at Celtic Park. Just as Jerry McCulloch speaks to Strack and Big John Hartson, they all look a bit casual tonight, don't they?
Jerry's looking pretty dapper, isn't he?
Yeah, he's looking pretty cash. Yeah. So bring the comments in. We're talking about Edouard, star man. We can't let him go even for £30 million plus. We're looking at Julien, the classic return to form. Every time Bowie used to release a solo album, it was a return to form, wasn't it, for his last 8 albums. And El Hamid, first choice right back without a doubt, I would suggest. And goals. That's 11 goals at Celtic Park so far in 2 games. That bodes well for Tannadice this weekend. So get the comments coming in. Let us know who your man of the match was. What do you think, Declan? Top man tonight?
Mohamed El-Nussi, I know he got given it there, but I just thought his all-round play he opened the floodgates for the game, was constantly active in the game, did well on that left-hand side, and he's thoroughly deserved his Man of the Match award, but it could have been to Odson Edouard as well. I mean, that solo goal was really something special.
That was incredible.
But I'll stick with what the fans went for in Mo El-Nussi, but Edouard was in for a shout too.
What about yourself, David? El-Nussi, Man of the Match?
I think so. I think it's a fair shout. El-Nussi, Odson Edouard, and a place on the podium for Hatem El Hamid as well, definitely, because I thought he was just superb at right back. Never put a foot wrong all night, as one would expect. But he just grows in stature every time he pulls on a Celtic jersey, as far as I'm concerned.
Does that solve a wee problem then? We've spoken about how James Forrest is in a position in the park that we perhaps need to strengthen for backup. Does Frimpong just becomes Forrest's backup then?
Possibly. It's a good shout. It's a good shout.
You know, because El Hamid, it's all been about injuries for El Hamid. He's always performed well. You just look at the crosshair for the goal that was turned in by the Reykjavík defender. Brilliant, right across the face of goal. It's a defender's nightmare, isn't it? I just think he's class, he's cool, and he's the type of player I think that players like Julien will look over and just feel safe that he's there. Whereas Frimpong, when it comes to defensive, and I like the boy,
hear him, scare him, isn't it?
He is, very much so. You look at where the breakaway came against Kilmarnock, it was down Frimpong's side, wasn't it? Which led to the penalty. Jason Christie, great show again, boys. Thank you very much for tuning in, Jason. We will be covering match days throughout this historic season for Celtic Football Club, and it's all about you guys and girls getting involved as well. El-Nussi has showed the skill and flair he showed last season. Great performance. Totally agree with you. I thought he was excellent tonight. I know we went up against brilliant opposition, but he has played at the highest level and performed at the highest level. And, he's a player that we've had him in by the end of this season, Declan, for 2 seasons on loan. His transfer value, no doubt, is dropping year on year from the 16 million that Southampton paid. Do you think he's a player that maybe after a couple of years we can actually buy him, bring him in permanently?
Depends. I mean, we spoke earlier on, if we maybe go into the Champions League and he does set that alight, he's Southampton might look to see him having a place down there, or another club could have interest in him, but he's certainly £16 million. I don't know if anybody would pay that for him just now, but possibly.
Wages always come into the equation, don't they, with these guys? But
it was clear that El-Nussi wanted to come back to Celtic this summer. I mean, that was he made that abundantly clear. So I think once he's as his contract starts to run down at Southampton, I've no idea how long he's got to run on that deal. But he may become affordable, and equally as importantly, he may be prepared to take the cut and take home pay that would be required to get him on the Celtic Park payroll.
When you look at the players like El-Nussi, who has gone to English football with aspirations probably of using Southampton as a stepping stone to move up in that league, and then being able to convince him to come to Celtic again. I'm a massive fan of Neil Lennon, but I just think the guy works wonders. He's convinced Ayeti to come permanently. Barcast, top quality, a higher pedigree and calibre of players that we have been signing previously under Lennon. So I think the man works wonders at Celtic Park, and he should get all the credit that comes his way.
Definitely. I mean, there's even an example that was going about that he flew to France to get the Julien deal over the line. And as you say, Paul, these are guys that we're spending a lot of money on, and the manager has been active in pursuit to get them to the club. It was something Rodgers did with Sinclair, and it's good that when we're going for quality, the manager's getting involved in making sure, telling them, I want you to come and play for us, and the reason why they want them. So I think that's a real testament to Neil as a manager.
I think his man management skills are very underestimated. And I think but the players all speak highly of him in that regard. It seems to be a happy camp. I think any talk of morale being at a low ebb in the wake of the bowling goal thing was completely overblown through the week. I think tonight's proven it. And I mean, he just seems to take an interest in
in what's happening around the club. If the development team is playing, he goes and watches them. I think he works really hard at guys like Luca Connell, Ewan Henderson, Scott Robertson, Ishmael Soro, feeling like they're part of the first team setup, even if they're not turning out regularly in the first 11.
Keep the comments coming in. We'll be on air for another few minutes. Gary Doonan, for me, looking at El Yunusi in the second half, and with Christie, Tom Rogic falls further down the line for the number 10 position. Got to agree with that. We're all very fond of Rogic, but it's a historical fondness because he's hardly done anything under Neil Lennon, and Lennon's now been in the job for 18 months almost. So I think when you're looking at Rogic, he is falling further and further away from a first team opportunity.
And he's only got himself to blame for that, and not really making an impact under the gaffer. Obviously he's had injury problems, but as Gary's saying there in the comments, that he has fallen down the pecking order, and if David Turnbull comes in, he will fall even further.
He's just a frustrating player he has been a frustrating player to watch of late, Tom Rogic. You know he's got the skill. He's also got the physique, but he doesn't seem to be able to impose himself on games in the way that you'd want. He seems to tiptoe around challenges a bit. He's also somewhat injury prone, I think it's fair to say. So it's just been a real source of frustration. As nobody would like to see Tom Rogic be a bigger, success for Celtic more than me. And I the potential's enormous, but he's just not been able to deliver on it in the last 18 months with any degree of consistency at all.
No, and the interesting thing is as well, David, when you get to that age, you've got to play more than 20 odd games a season. You've got to, because then you come to the end of your career, you've only played 200 games.
Yeah.
So Tom Rogic, I think it's going to be vital for him in the next few weeks.
He's still an Australian international.
Yeah.
How does he further his international career if he's not playing regular club football? The situation is going to come to a head, and it may come to a head this transfer window.
And again, it'd be sad to see him go. However, where is he going to go? There was talk previously of interest in English football. Who is going to buy Tom Rogic when he hasn't proved for some time that he can still do what we remember him for? He's written his name into the Celtic history books for what he's done. But that was a long time ago now, wasn't it?
It was a long time ago, and we can't dwell on the past.
He might flourish in a slightly less physical league like France, for example. That might be the sort of I remember a former Australian international, Robbie Slater, playing in France for many years. He was a big success at Racing Club of Lens, and Tom Rogic, somewhere like France, where maybe a bit more time on the ball, not quite as physical. He might be a success there. Somebody somewhere will come in for him, but I don't think it'll be an English team.
No.
He's been there a long time, 7 years or something. He's been at Celtic Park.
Yeah.
So,
and look at Tommy Rogic's career first time round under Neil Lennon. It was actually after Lennon left that he started to flourish. I'm not saying there's a rift between the players, but maybe Lenny doesn't fancy him. Tonight for me is all about Celtic getting back on track. We've had lots of negativity thrown our way after the ball and golly incident. We've gone out there, we've impressed. Yeah, you can only play up against the standard of opposition that's in front of you, but we've done it well. We've had some brilliant performances tonight. I, for one, am happy. I'm looking forward to this weekend. Declan, David, tell me, what's your prediction for Dundee United?
I'm going to go, I think it'll be a tough game. I think it'll be quite tight, but I'm going to go for a 2-0 Celtic victory. I'm quite confident now. After watching that, we can get a clean sheet up there and get a couple of goals. So 2-0 Celtic.
2-0 Celtic, David?
4-1 Hoops.
4-1 for the Hoops.
I'm feeling confident after tonight. I think we've got goals in us, and I fancy us to get on the score sheet a few times on Saturday evening.
Here's hoping this comes to an end. Our fourth live broadcast of the day. We'll be back tomorrow with a Celtic State of Mind's bulletin, and of course we'll be covering the game on Saturday also. So thank you all for joining us on a Celtic State of Mind. All that's left for me to say is thank you to our match sponsors JBM's, and thank you to Declan McConville and David Slight for joining me on a Celtic State of Mind.